Chapter 7:11. It was swift, agile, weak, and cold. The surrounding heaven and earth seemed to become still in an instant. The extremely fast sword light became unprecedentedly clear in the completely still environment. The domain enveloped the whole area in a mighty manner. In Daybreak's sight, two beams of sword light that would be ignored if he didn't pay attention to them merged together. There were two vague figures flashing in the air. In the blink of an eye, the sword edge shining with cold light had reached his chest. It was completely silent. Daybreak, who had entered the invincible realm, couldn't even do basic dodging. When death came, he just instinctively turned his body sideways. His movements seemed to become slow under the sword light. No one could tell how far he moved sideways. Maybe it was 1 centimeter, maybe it was 2 centimeters. As soon as his body moved, the sword edge had already pierced through his chest. The splashing blood was incomparably gorgeous in the sun. A large area of the domain suddenly exploded with Daybreak's serious injury. Two muffled groans suddenly sounded and then went away in an instant. The next second, the vague figure had already reached Ramiro's side. Daybreak's face was pale. While blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, Ramiro's figure had already been wrapped by the sword light and disappeared in an instant. Fast. Everything happened too fast. From beginning to end, it only took 2 or 3 seconds. The killing intent of heaven and earth within 100 meters was surging. The deputy temple master of the Dark Azura Hall, Gray, saved Daybreak at the critical moment, but he himself became flesh and blood all over the sky. He died without a whole body, and Daybreak was seriously injured on the spot. Ramiro left the battlefield. It seemed that in the blink of an eye, the two beams of flowing light that flashed in the air had completely changed the situation. Daybreak's body swayed in the air and finally managed to stabilize. He looked in the direction where Ramiro had disappeared. The corner of his mouth moved, but he didn't say anything. An indescribable fear swept across the battlefield. The situation of surviving the disaster, the anger of failing the task, and the grief of losing a close friend surged in. Daybreak felt dizzy. In just a few seconds, he could be said to have really experienced death. If Grey Dark hadn't stepped forward, even if he was an expert of the invincible realm, he wouldn't have survived under that sword. The two assassins themselves weren't too strong. They were ordinary experts of the half-step invincible realm, but their sword intents were of the same origin, and their minds were connected. Once their full power erupted in an instant and formed a joint force, it was the real sword energy of the invincible realm. This was the most traditional assassin, and also the best assassin. The lurking skill that could hide from the invincible realm, the sword intent that was condensed to the extreme without any momentum, the full outbreak of breaking through the limit in an instant, and the lethality that could not be guarded against. Calm, stealthy, decisive. Once his attack failed, he immediately retreated. Such two assassins were not powerful when they were alone, but under the right opportunity, they were enough to pose a fatal threat to most of the invincible realm experts below the peak of the invincible realm. Daybreak was absent-minded. He remembered the heavenly Luo Palace in the purgatory of Heaven Capital. Or rather, it was a sigh. If the two assassins fought alone with their ultimate strength, they might not be the opponents of Cool Breeze or Drifting Cloud of Sai City. But once they joined forces, their lethality was far greater than that of Cool Breeze and Drifting Cloud. The most terrifying thing was that Daybreak had never heard of such assassins before. He took a deep breath. The moment his chest rose and fell, a large amount of blood burst out from the tiny wounds. Daybreak swallowed the blood in his mouth. He wanted to say something, but as soon as he opened his mouth, he suddenly lost his strength and fell from the air. The darkness completely swallowed his will. His body fell directly on the grass. At the same time that the Burning Legion began to retreat, in the conference room of the Zhongzhou State Parliament in the Hidden Dragon Sea in Yuzhou, the high-level meeting convened by President Li Huaqing of Zhongzhou State had officially begun. 10 people from Zhongzhou State attended this meeting. In addition to the 9 council members, there was also Gu Xingyun, the god of war of Zhongzhou State. There was no counselor in the large conference room. It was empty and cold, but it looked more and more solemn. Gu Xingyun sat at the conference table, drinking tea in silence, feeling the solemn and oppressive atmosphere around him, expressionless. He knew very well what it meant that the meeting had been delayed until now. Li Huaqing was waiting. The first was to wait for Dongqing Wudi from Lin, and to rush back to Yuzhou. The second was to wait for him. The distance from Kunlun to Yuzhou was far longer than the distance from Lin and to Yuzhou. So the meeting began as soon as Gu Xingyun arrived at the Hidden Dragon Sea. The corner of Gu Xingyun's mouth twitched, but he remained calm. Everyone is here. Let's start the meeting. In the main seat of the conference room, facing the national flag and emblem, Li Huaqing's bright and sharp eyes swept across the conference room. He said in a deep voice, "Everyone, what happened in Tiannan? Before the meeting began, a document has been formed and sent to you. For more than 3 years, we have poured a lot of effort into the Freedom Corps. But just a few hours ago, the Burning Legion raided Tunnan City, where the Freedom Corps was stationed. The Legion suffered heavy losses and Tunnan City fell, which means that we have lost more than half of our support to the Freedom Corps in the past few years. What do you think about this matter?" There was silence. The fall of Tunnan City was too sudden. Even now, the giants of Zhongzhou State were still thinking about countermeasures. This matter was too sensitive, and they could not swallow this loss. Zhongzhou State never had the style of being beaten without fighting back. And if they really tolerated it this time, the Burning Legion was bound to be insatiable, and the Freedom Corps would not even be able to stand in Tiannan in the future. Give up Tiannan? Zhongzhou State did not have this option. Revenge must be taken, but the most important thing was how to do it. In the case that Zhongzhou State was not suitable to expose too much territorial ambition to Tiannan, it was actually difficult for them to find a way to quickly attack the Burning Legion. In the silence, Li Huaqing slightly narrowed his eyes and shifted his gaze. His gaze fell on the expressionless Gu Xingyun, and he suddenly said in a deep voice, "Your Highness Gu Xingyun, what do you think? Of course we have to fight back. The importance of Tiannan to Zhongzhou State is self-evident. In recent years, the situation in Southeast Asia is very sensitive. If we can control Tiannan, we can greatly relieve the pressure in the south of Zhongzhou State. Moreover, the Burning Legion is too arrogant and domineering. If we don't teach them a lesson, they will really think that there is no one in Zhongzhou State who can do that." Gu Xingyun looked calm and said, "Kunlun City is willing to carry out the task of attacking the Burning Legion." His voice was calm, without any emotion. As the war god of Zhongzhou State, his statement was very in line with his identity. Li Huaqing took a deep look at him. Gu Xingyun met his gaze without avoiding it. But he was a little impatient in his heart. As he said, Kunlun City was willing to accept the task of repelling the Burning Legion. As long as the parliament agreed, Kunlun City could gather a super luxurious lineup, but it did not need to face a real war. He had always thought that the Burning Legion was just a dog of Kunlun City. As the master, the Burning Legion could only give up what Kunlun City wanted. So Gu Xingyun was very sure that he would not even suffer any loss when he took back Tunnan City. He just pretended to fight, repelled the Burning Legion, and recovered Tunnan City. A great credit would fall on Kunlun City's head. After this battle, Emperor Dong's palace suffered a heavy blow and its strength declined. Kunlun City took advantage of this matter to stabilize the situation. After the internal unification of ideas, they went to plot against Tiannan. Yes, plot against Tiannan. As long as Kunlun City could recover Tunnan City, it would not give up Tunnan to the Freedom Corps. At that time, Kunlun City would come forward and cooperate with the Prince Group to take the Freedom Corps from the Giant Group. When occupying Ningbian and Tunnan, Kunlun City would replace Ning Ziyuan and become one of the strongest forces in Tiannan while suppressing Emperor Dong's palace. With the cooperation of the Burning Legion, Kunlun City would unify Tiannan soon. After taking over Tiannan, even if Gu Xingyun retired later, Kunlun City had enough foundation and could still become one of the strongest forces in Zhongzhou State. In time, they would transform into a super force and become the second Wang family of Beihai. In this matter, Gu Xingyun did not even have a strong competitor. Emperor Dong's palace? Emperor Dong's palace, which had just suffered a great loss, did not deserve to compete with Kunlun City. The Wang family of Beihai. Beihai Province, the Wang family of Beihai, and the Southeast Group were in a mess after being defeated by Li Tianlan, and Wang Tianzong was missing. At this time, the Wang family of Beihai had to deal with the internal turmoil first and then face the pressure from Zhongzhou State. They would not compete with Kunlun City either. As long as Kunlun City could seize this opportunity, they would almost be invincible in the future. Show them what we're made of. Li Huaqing squinted at Gu Xingyun and suddenly said, "How sure are you, Your Highness? When the war breaks out, no one can say that they are 100% sure, but Kunlun City will try its best. With the strength of Kunlun City, we have at least a 70% chance of winning over Tunan." Gu Xingyun said blandly. He did not say it too confidently, but a 70% chance of winning was not low in any case. Kunlun City is really well prepared. Dongsheng Wudi suddenly sneered. Gu Xingyun raised his eyelids and said blandly, "What do you mean, Minister Dongsheng?" "I don't mean anything, and I don't want to. To anyone. But don't you think it's too much of a coincidence? Tonight, not only Tunan was attacked, but also the private hospital in Yuzhou. We have always kept the situation of the private hospital confidential, but those crazy thugs have clearly grasped the situation of the wounded in the hospital. Their actions are very targeted. This is a premeditated raid, and the goal is very clear. They want not only Tiannan, but also the East Emperor Palace and the Li family." Dongsheng Wudi's tone was cold. "What happened tonight? I think someone deliberately leaked the news to the Burning Legion, which is the important reason for the fall of Tunan and the attack on the hospital. In other words, someone committed treason." Everyone's heart shook fiercely. Treason. This word had always had an unusual meaning in Zhongzhou State in recent years, and such an accusation was even more shocking when it came from the mouth of a council member of Zhongzhou State Parliament. When he said this, Dongsheng Wudi's eyes were fixed on Gu Xingyun. Gu Xingyun's expression was indifferent, but his eyes suddenly became sharp. "Minister, do you mean that you suspect that Kunlun City leaked the news?" He stared at Dongsheng Wudi with awe-inspiring momentum. "I'm just thinking about who has the motive to do so," Dongsheng Wudi said blandly. Gu Xingyun narrowed his eyes and did not speak. To be honest, he was really not afraid of Dongsheng Wudi's suspicion. He did hire the Burning Legion to raid Tunan City and the hospital, and it was also his order. But there was no clue or evidence for this matter. He had absolute confidence that Zhongzhou State would not catch him, so he was not afraid at all. He would be suspected, which was something he had been psychologically prepared for before he came. In fact, it was most normal for Zhongzhou State to suspect him now, especially these council members in front of him. These were the figures standing at the peak of Zhongzhou State today. The future of Zhongzhou State was currently in their hands, and they all knew Zhongzhou State's future plan. They made the next plan to target the Wang family of Beihai, which the Wang family of Beihai also knew. Moreover, when Wang Tianzong was missing, the Wang family of Beihai was eager to stabilize the situation and face the next game, so they would not make trouble to cooperate with the Burning Legion. But tonight, the Burning Legion's purpose was too strong. It was obvious that they were targeting the Li family and Li Tianlan. Within Zhongzhou State, when Li Guangtu's identity was exposed, Li Hong had died, and Li Tianlan rose. There were only two forces that were eager to target the Li family. The first was the Wang family of Beihai, but they were busy now. The second was Kunlun City. Gu Xingyun was seriously injured, and the situation of Kunlun City was not optimistic. But because of this, it was more likely that Gu Xingyun would do something desperate. This was a very logical speculation. Zhongzhou State still insisted on calling him to this high-level meeting when it knew that he was seriously injured, which also showed that Zhongzhou State had locked its suspicious eyes on him. But it was still the same sentence. There was no evidence. Gu Xingyun did not leave any evidence. So he was not afraid of any suspicion. The timing of the Burning Legion's appearance is too coincidental. Is it their own decision to appear in Tiannan, or is it some kind of employment or transaction? It's worth investigating. In a flat and steady voice, Zhou Mulan, another director of the giant group, raised his head and looked at the crowd. He said slowly, "Investigate this matter from within Zhongzhou State. Maybe there will be clues." Of course we have to investigate, but this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is what about Tunan? Qin Fangqing, the Prime Minister of Zhongzhou State, smiled. The voice of the leader of the Prince Group was extremely cold. In any case, we have to go to Tiannan as soon as possible. President, comrades, I have a suggestion. Everyone subconsciously sat up straight. Li Huaqing's expression also became solemn. What's the Prime Minister's suggestion? If the President was the leader of the party in Zhongzhou State, then from the national level, the Prime Minister was the spokesperson of Zhongzhou State. Moreover, Prime Minister Qin Fangqing was extremely strong. Whether internally or externally, he rarely compromised. Li Huaqing had to seriously consider his opinion. Since the Burning Legion can appear in Tiannan, why can't Zhongzhou State? Zhongzhou State once said that it had no territorial ambitions for Tiannan, but that was when Tiannan was occupied by the rebels. Everyone thought that Annan State could quickly recover Tiannan, but now 3 years have passed. It turns out that Annan State no longer has the strength to recover Tiannan. Tiannan has now become a real ownerless land. It's time for Zhongzhou State to change its original position. He was silent for a moment and suddenly said, "What's the status of the Burning Legion in Africa?" Dongxing Wudi hesitated and said lightly, "It's the first legion in Africa, but its sphere of influence is not as great as that of the Divine Martial Corps. The reason why it is called the first is the strength of Ramalan and the comprehensive combat capability of the Burning Legion. In terms of scale and territory, they are not as good as the Divine Martial Corps. But in West Africa, there are also 2 small countries under the control of the Burning Legion." Qin Fangqing nodded and continued to ask, "Which 2 countries?" "Sankar and Lanka," Dongxing Wudi said. As the actual head of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State, the situation in Africa was one of the focuses he should pay attention to. "The problem is very simple." Qin Fangqing nodded. "Order the Divine Martial Corps to declare war on Sankar and Lanka. At the same time, we accuse Sankar and Lanka at the United Nations Conference. It's a fact that the Burning Legion entered Tiannan. It's a fact that Sankar and Lanka invaded Asia. Such behavior has undermined the stability of Asia and also posed a threat to Zhongzhou State. We are obliged to take action. Let the whole Black Dragon army attack, destroy the Burning Legion, and take down the entire Tiannan. Don't worry about anything." He paused, looked at the changing faces of the directors, and said lightly, "When it's time to be tough, we should be tough." No one spoke. For a moment, everyone was speechless. Accuse Sankar and Lanka of invading Asia at the United Nations Conference? That was a joke. Even in West Africa, Sankar and Lanka were not strong countries. In a small place, it was suicide to encroach on Asia and provoke Zhongzhou State. But the action of the Burning Legion could be interpreted in this way. I agree with the Prime Minister. As soon as Qin Fangqing finished speaking, Guo Wentian, the President of the National Assembly and another tycoon of the Prince Group, said, "The Divine Martial Army is the force of the Wang family of Beihai and also the force of Zhongzhou State. At the critical moment, the Divine Martial Army is obliged to make contributions to Zhongzhou State. Attacking Sankar and Lanka can also contain the Burning Legion. If the Black Dragon army attacks Tunan City, the Burning Legion may not be able to stop it. Ramalan must make a choice. As long as we prove that we must take down Tunan and even the whole Tiannan, Ramalan can't fight to the death. His biggest possibility is to give up Tiannan and retreat to Africa." Guo Wentian knocked on the table heavily. "Just because we are Zhongzhou State." Yes, just because they could represent Zhongzhou State. Zhongzhou State was the most powerful country in the world. Once Zhongzhou State made it clear that it didn't care about anything, the Burning Legion alone wouldn't be able to hold Tiannan. Sank and Lanka were their rear. The rear would be attacked by the Divine Might Legion, and the front would be suppressed by Zhongzhou State. Any smart person would know what to do. Retreat and return to defend were what Ramelan had to do. Li Huaqing's heart skipped a beat. He quickly shifted his gaze and glanced at Qin Fangqing. He didn't know if it was intentional or a coincidence, but Qin Fangqing's gaze also turned to him. The president and the prime minister looked at each other for a moment and then past each other. Li Huaqing's eyes flickered. He understood what Qin Fangqing meant. Letting the Divine Martial Army start a war in Africa was not only to contain the Burning Legion, but also to contain the Wang family of Beihai. The Divine Martial Army was the most powerful non-staff force of the Wang family of Beihai in Africa, or even in the world. Nearly 300,000 elites were stationed in Africa for a long time. The army was strong and well-trained, and it could be said to be the worst and most powerful retreat of the Wang family of Beihai. Once Zhongzhou State and the Wang family of Beihai began to play, the Wang family of Beihai, who didn't dare to sit still and wait for death, would definitely play all their cards. At that time, the Divine Martial Army would become the most important bargaining chip in the Wang family of Beihai's hands. But once the war in Africa broke out, the Divine Martial Army would attack Sonk and Lanka, and the Burning Legion would definitely give up Tiannan. How could Ramiro be willing to let his rear be occupied by the Divine Martial Army? At that time, the largest legion in Africa and the first legion in Africa were bound to collide. Such a collision would not determine the winner or loser in a short time. Instead, it would take up all the energy of both sides. Since the Burning Legion was known as the first legion in Africa, after a long time, the Divine Martial Army would definitely be no match for it. Maybe they would even ask for help from the Wang family of Beihai. This was tantamount to destroying one of the trump cards of the Wang family of Beihai, and it could even take up more of the Wang family of Beihai's energy. With the attack of the Burning Legion in Tiannan, Qin Fangqing had actually begun to prepare for the next game. Prime Minister, maybe you don't know, but the headquarters of the Divine Martial Army is in North Africa, far away from Sonk and Lanka. If the war breaks out, the battle line will be too long, and the Divine Martial Army may not be at an advantage. They do have the obligation to fight for Zhongzhou State. But such a war will consume too much energy. I think we should carefully consider it. Vice President Wan Qingyun of Zhongzhou State gritted his teeth, and there was a flash of anger in his eyes. As the leader of the Southeast Group, he knew very well that once the Divine Martial Army was mentioned, the direction of this meeting would change. To be honest, it was indeed important for the Burning Legion to take down Tunan, but it was not an unsolvable problem for Zhongzhou State. If this problem could be used to link the game with the Wang family of Beihai, Zhongzhou State would rather this matter be solved slowly. But as the spokesperson of the Wang family of Beihai in Zhongzhou State, Wan Qingyun naturally did not want them to do as they wished. This matter really needs to be carefully considered. If we brazenly send troops to take down Tiannan, Annan State will definitely protest. At that time, Zhongzhou State will be under great pressure. Ji Wenzhang, the director of the Ministry of Supervision, said flatly. Annan State? For more than 3 years, Annan State has long proved that they have lost control of Tiannan. All they can do is protest. We are the most powerful country in the world. I don't think we can't withstand a little pressure. If they protest, let them be. Qin Fangqing said disapprovingly. The problem is that things are not that bad now. There are still other ways to solve the problem. Ji Wenzhang smiled and calmly corrected the direction of the meeting. Before I came here, I had received the report from Wang Zhaojian, the vice commander of the Freedom Corps. Li Tianlan has arrived in Tunan City. He asked Ning Ziyuan, the commander of the Freedom Corps, to send troops to recapture Tiannan, but Ning Ziyuan refused. He not only reported this matter to me, but also to Minister Dongqing, right? I want to ask, at this time, Ning Ziyuan has lost Tiannan, but he refuses to send troops. What does he, the commander of the Freedom Corps, want to do? Does he really want to be free? Ji Wenzhang's voice was very light, but as he spoke, his words became heavier and heavier. In the end, it could almost be said to be harsh. Dongqing Wudi was stunned. He looked cold and did not speak. Is there such a thing? Qin Fangqing was stunned. Looking at Dongqing Wudi, He narrowed his eyes and said, "Minister, what's going on?" "It's a little sudden, and I just received the report before the meeting. I haven't communicated with Comrade Ziyuan yet. You should know Ziyuan better. He has a calm character. It's not difficult to understand that he didn't act rashly when Tunan City just fell. After the meeting, I'll ask him the specific reason," Dongqing Wudi said flatly. He was the executive minister of the army headquarters, and it could be said that he was Ning Ziyuan's immediate superior. If he insisted on blocking this matter, no one could really find a good reason. Ji Wenjiang smiled, and there was some sarcasm in his eyes. "Of course I understand Comrade Ziyuan's calmness, but calmness doesn't mean cowardice. Now the Freedom Corps hasn't sent troops, but His Highness Li Tianlan is still fighting in Tunan City. Now it's Emperor Dong's palace that is fighting with the Burning Legion, only Emperor Dong's palace. When they need support, what is the Freedom Corps doing? Where is Ning Ziyuan? If they don't send troops under such circumstances, what's the point of the existence of the Freedom Corps?" Chen Fangqing's face darkened. Gu Xingyun's expression suddenly changed. "Only Emperor Dong's palace?" He suddenly turned his head and looked at Ji Wenjiang. Ji Wenjiang smiled and didn't speak, but the direction of the meeting changed again as he spoke. Li Huaqing frowned and didn't say anything. Gu Xingyun's face was cloudy and he almost lost his composure. At that moment, he was really thinking about the problem after Emperor Dong's palace captured Tunan. Kunlun City wanted to capture Tunan, and then make Tiannan its own base camp. If Emperor Dong's palace did this, Gu Xingyun didn't expect Li Tianlan to give up the control of Tiannan. If he really did this, Emperor Dong's palace would really have a foundation. At the thought of this possibility, he couldn't help but panic. But after thinking about the strength of the Burning Legion and Ramalan, he finally forced himself to calm down. "Report." A loud voice suddenly sounded outside the meeting room. Everyone subconsciously froze for a moment. But Dongqing Wudi seemed to have been waiting for this report. He immediately said in a deep voice, "Come in." The door of the meeting room was pushed open. General Bai Qingzhao, the Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters, walked into the meeting room and gave a standard military salute to the directors in the meeting room. "Report, the war in Tunan City is over." The whole room was silent. No one seemed to have come back to their senses. Crack. The hard teacup turned into powder in Gu Xingyun's hand. The tea flowed, and Gu Xingyun's face was livid. He stared at Bai Qingzhao. "What do you mean the war is over? How is Tunan?" His voice was obviously trembling. Emperor Dong's palace successfully defeated the Burning Legion, and His Highness Li Tianlan took back Tunan City. Bai Qingzhao laughed with undisguised arrogance and complacency. "That's impossible." Gu Xingyun's face instantly became distorted. He suddenly stood up, and his eyes were a little ferocious. But his gaffe was covered by the shock of the whole room. Li Huaqing also stood up, a little lost. "What the hell is going on? Qingzhao, do you have any specific information?" When the news of Tunan's fall came, it was already midnight. Even if Li Tianlan left as soon as possible, it should be morning when he arrived in Tiannan. Now the morning was not over, and Tunan had already been taken back. Their meeting on how to take back Tiannan was not over yet, but the war in Tunan was already over. Was Zhongzhou State too slow? Or was Li Tianlan too fast? The signal in Tiannan is a little bad, and the picture is still being transmitted. But we have got in touch with His Highness Li Tianlan. He defeated Ramalan, and the Burning Legion has now retreated. His Highness is arranging people to kill them. Tunan City is already under the control of Emperor Dong's palace. Chen Fangqing's heart sank. Gu Xingyun's heart also sank. How was it possible? How did Li Tianlan do it? People were not surprised that he could defeat Ramalan. Even Ramalan himself would not be surprised. Li Tianlan's strength was obvious to all. Now, with his growth, Li Tianlan had indeed stood at the peak in the dark world of the new era. The reason why Ramalan dared to challenge Li Tianlan was not because of his personal strength, but because of the comprehensive strength of the Burning Legion and the 3 military bases near Tunan City. With these, the Burning Legion was in an invincible position in the face of Emperor Dong's palace, which did not have many people. He had defeated Ramlan, but the Burning Legion's elites and 3 military bases were all for naught. It's impossible. How could he do this? 3 bases and nearly 10,000 elites of the Burning Legion. How could he win? Gu Xingyun's face was extremely twisted and ferocious. He did not notice that when he said this, the other counselors were stiff. Even they did not know that there were nearly 10,000 elites of the Burning Legion in Tunan City. How did Gu Xingyun know? But Gu Xingyun, who was in a mess, obviously did not notice this. Tunan City was a key step in his plan, which was related to the future of Kunlun City. Now, Li Tianlan had taken the fruit. He was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. We need to know more about the specific situation. But according to the simple news, there were 10 lurkers and a large number of airborne soldiers on the battlefield in Tunan City, and even electromagnetic weapons. They helped His Highness control the 3 bases and the ordinary elites of the Burning Legion, Bai Qingzhao said calmly. Gu Xingyun's brain was buzzing, and he could hardly stand. Lurkers. There were 10 F*King lurkers. With this reason, it really did not matter whether there were other reasons or not. Not only Gu Xingyun. Even Ji Wenjiang and Wan Qingyun looked a little gloomy, because they had already seen the next direction of the meeting. Sure enough, Chen Fangqing was silent for a while and suddenly said, "What's the current movement of the Burning Legion?" "They're retreating. They're hundreds of miles away from Tunan City. Not long ago, they were raided by the Purgatory of Heaven capital. Daybreak, an expert of the Invincible Realm, personally took action, but he was seriously injured. At present, the Burning Legion has successfully escaped, and Ramalan was rescued." Bai Qingzhao reported with a serious face. The Burning Legion shouldn't have come to Tiannan." Chen Fangqing snorted coldly. "Want to leave? Can you?" He glanced at Li Huaqing and said calmly, "I stick to my original plan, but the Black Dragon Corps may not be needed. Let Emperor Dong's palace chase the Burning Legion, let the Divine Martial Corps attack Sonk and Lanka, and completely defeat the Burning Legion. In the land of Asia, no force that dares to target Zhongzhou State is allowed to exist." Li Huaqing narrowed his eyes and glanced at the gloomy expressions of Wan Qingyun and Ji Wenjiang. He smiled and said calmly, "I agree." Chapter 712. At noon, the dispute in Tunan City finally came to an end. It was supposed to be a quiet scene in the plan, but now it was very lively. According to Li Tianlan's plan, the operation involving only hundreds of people from Emperor Dong's palace was only on the scale of hundreds of people. If they could win, it would probably be a mess. It would be a very difficult test to disperse these people in Tunan City and the 3 military bases, and it would also be troublesome to deal with the follow-up. But now it was different. More than 2,000 paratroopers did not sound like a lot, but when it came down to it, these people could be of great use in battles and finishing up the aftermath. With the return of the incognito, the whole of Tunan gradually became lively. 10 concealers parked on a grassland on the outskirts of Tunan City. The silver superalloy body reflected the cold luster in the sun, looking proud and awe-inspiring. Li Tianlan sat not far away, looking at the 10 big toys that changed the whole situation. He narrowed his eyes and no one knew what he was thinking. The members of the Angel Holy War were doing post-battle maintenance for the concealers. Number 1 stood respectfully beside Li Tianlan and said nothing. This was enough to show the sincerity of the new stream in supporting Li Tianlan. 10 concealers and 4 transport planes were well-deserved gifts. For Emperor Dong's palace, which was in urgent need of manpower, more than 2,000 paratroopers were priceless treasures. But most importantly, the new stream didn't leave any high-level officials for Li Tianlan. It was full of sincerity and no one could find fault with it. If the high-level members of the new stream joined Emperor Dong's palace, then all the forces of the new stream on the battlefield today would be handed over by Li Tianlan to the high-level members of the new stream. They might be loyal to the new stream, but in this way, it meant that the new stream had penetrated into Emperor Dong's palace. Now that there were no high-level members, these people would be completely loyal to Li Tianlan. As time went by, everyone would completely become Li Tianlan's direct force. How many forces like the Angel Holy War does the new stream have? Li Tianlan asked suddenly. The corner of number one's mouth twitched. He said respectfully, strictly speaking, the Angel Crusade is a flight squadron, but it's more than that. According to the military establishment of Zhongzhou State, it can be regarded as an armed helicopter squadron plus an airborne corps. 10 concealers, for transport planes, and more than 2,000 airborne soldiers can all be regarded as members of the Angel Crusade. Such a force, even in the new stream, is under the direct leadership of Her Highness the Saintess and His Highness the Pope. What do you mean? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. Although number one's words were euphemistic, it had fully explained the importance of Saint War Angels in the new stream. Such importance was even more important than he had expected. Yes. Number one said calmly, even in the new stream, the Holy War of Angels is one of the most important forces. As far as the organized armed forces are concerned, there is no one more powerful than the Holy War of Angels in the new stream. The Holy War of Angels is the only one. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and looked at the lurkers under the sun again. The fact was surprising, but it was also normal. Number one's strength was not outstanding, he had just passed the fire-flaming realm. The other members of the flight squad were all in the ice-condensing realm. Their combat strength was low, but in terms of professional quality, they were the top pilots, or in other words, the top modern warriors. Not only helicopters, but also fighter planes and transport planes. Number one even said that they had received training on all kinds of ships and submarines. They could familiarize themselves with all kinds of sea, land, and air transportation vehicles in the shortest time. No matter how weak their individual strength was, they were the top talents in all the major forces. It was not easy for the new stream to train 10 of them. If they could have a second force like the Holy War of Angels, the new stream would not have hidden its strength in Southeast Asia. But if the Holy War of Angels was the only one in the new stream, why would they be sent to help Li Tianlan on this occasion? Why would they even send the entire new stream to him? Li Tianlan had seen those who helped before, but this kind of sincerity with all their assets was very strange to Li Tianlan. What's the name of the saintess of the new stream? Have you seen her? Li Tianlan asked. Number one was still respectful. For him, now that he had joined Emperor Dong's palace, the new stream was already a thing of the past. He could still tell this kind of thing apart. But when it came to the saintess, even though number one was very calm, there was still a touch of fanaticism in his eyes. The saintess has no name. He said softly, the saintess is indeed the saintess. I had the honor to see her once, from a long distance. Her Highness the Saintess, the most perfect goddess is nothing more than this. The most perfect goddess. Li Tianlan's heart suddenly trembled a little. A sound came from the communicator of number one. He listened carefully for a while, looked at Li Tianlan and said softly, Your Highness, the battle casualties are out. Say it. Li Tianlan didn't pay attention to it and said casually. In this battle, a total of 2,700 paratroopers successfully landed in Tiannan. 400 died and 200 were injured. At present, including the wounded, there are about 2,200 people who can go back to the battle. Number one reported. Li Tianlan was a little surprised. This kind of battle casualties was much lower than he expected. The first batch of paratroopers were just ordinary fanatics of the new stream. In other words, they were the cannon fodder to cover the later paratroopers. The second batch of paratroopers were the real elites. That was to say, in this battle, except for the cannon fodder who died in the battle, the real elites had almost no loss. He had seen the level of the Burning Legion. The elites of the Burning Legion seemed to be defenseless in his hands, but on the battlefield, they were powerful enough to destroy everything. They dared to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Thunderbolt Battalion. The combat capability of the Burning Legion was not to be trifled with. In this battle, even with the cover of the aerial attack of the lurkers and the ground attack of the elites of Emperor Dong's palace, the paratroopers could still cause such casualties, which was enough to show that their quality was better than Li Tianlan expected. If the loyalty of this group of people could be guaranteed, they would become the most trustworthy cornerstone of Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan nodded and said, "Count the dead and I will arrange for people to pay the pension to their families in a short time. Number 1, you take care of this matter." "Okay." Number 1 nodded calmly. His eyes followed Li Tianlan's gaze and fell on the 10 lurkers. He said softly, "Your Highness, do you have any idea about the empty city transport planes?" The lurkers were very small, so it was very convenient for them to land. A lawn was enough. But the 4 empty city transport planes were real behemoths. A lawn was not enough for them to take off and land. They needed a tailor-made runway and professional command for their takeoff and landing. This kind of bulky big guys was not very cost-effective for the newly developed Emperor Dong's palace. At least, it was far less practical than the lurkers. The only 2 points were that the 4 empty city transport planes were manned transport planes. If there was a real large-scale war, such transport planes were basically useless. But in a small-scale war, the manned transport planes could be regarded as strategic killing machines. But such a value was also much lower than that of the lurkers. Most importantly, they were packaged together with the lurkers by the new stream and sent to Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan had to accept them. At this time, the whole world was focusing on the conflict between the Burning Legion in Tiannan and Emperor Dong's palace. Once the transport planes returned to the new stream, the hidden strength of the new stream would be almost exposed. But the problem was that there was no airport in Tiannan for the empty city transport planes to land. So now the 4 empty city transport planes were still invisible, carefully avoiding the detection signals of various countries and flying over Tiannan. There is no place in Tiannan to leave these 4 transport planes. Li Tianlan shook his head and said slowly, "Let's go to Eastern Europe." "Eastern Europe?" "No." One looked dull. "Reki City." Li Tianlan nodded. The Snowdance Corps would be stationed in Reki City in the future. If there were no accidents, there should not be a change of defense. With careful operation, the Snowdance Corps would still be Li Tianlan's team in the future. And with the strength of Wulan State, it would not be a problem to eat 4 transport planes. The key was that the Wang family of Beihai had taken over Snow Country, and the Li family had taken over the 5 countries in Eastern Europe. In the future, there would inevitably be small-scale conflicts, and the manned transport planes would come in handy. But, it's too far, no. One was stunned. Tiannan was still south of the border of Zhongzhou State. From here to Eastern Europe, they had to fly all the way north, cross the entire border of Zhongzhou State, pass through Snow Country, and reach Reki City. Such a journey was more than 10,000 miles. The transport planes could not reach such a distance at all. "I'll tell Zhongzhou State about the distance and let them resupply in time and space. At present, this is the only way," Li Tianlan said. "No." One nodded with a wry smile and began to give orders. He muttered, "It seems that the airborne soldiers of the Saint War Angels will become infantry in the future." Li Tianlan smiled and looked back at Tunan City. He had begun to think about the future of Emperor Dong's palace. This seemed to be the first time that he had thought so carefully about the future of Emperor Dong's palace, the future of the Li family, and his own future. Because the old man who would always hold up the sky for him in the dark had left. Next, he could only rely on himself. The phone suddenly rang. Li Tianlan took out his mobile phone and glanced at it. It was a number from Yuzhou. He narrowed his eyes, pressed the answer button, and said hello. "Marshal Li Tianlan?" A steady voice sounded on the phone. It was the voice of General Bai Qingzhao, the Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters of Zhongzhou State. The wording was very formal. Li Tianlan immediately realized that the occasion was unusual. He nodded and said calmly, "Hello, Deputy Secretary General." "Marshal Li, what's the situation in Tunan?" Bai Qingzhao's voice was obviously concerned. I'm currently in the conference room in the Hidden Dragon Sea. Zhongzhou State is holding a high-level meeting. We've got some information. At present, the parliament is very concerned about the situation in Tiannan. Marshal Li, can you tell us about it? Li Tianlan's eyes flickered and he said seriously, the war is over. The Burning Legion has officially left Tunan City. Emperor Dong's palace has taken over everything in Tunan City. However, the civilian casualties in Tunan City are very serious. The specific number is still being calculated. In the military base, some armaments were also damaged. In addition, Mayor Li of Tunan City was executed by the Burning Legion. I want to make a self-criticism to the parliament. I didn't keep Ramalan, which betrayed the trust of the parliament. It's not your fault, Marshal Li. Finally hearing the clear news, Bai Qingzhao breathed a sigh of relief. He stood in the conference room of the parliament and looked at the giants in the parliament. Hearing Li Tianlan's self-criticism and even his request for punishment, Dongqing Wudi, the standing minister of the army headquarters, was the first to speak. You handled this matter very well and saved a lot of losses for Zhongzhou State. In fact, we're glad that you chose to stabilize the situation in Tiannan first. It turns out that the Burning Legion still has a trump card. In the process of retreat, the Burning Legion, which suffered heavy losses, was attacked by the Purgatory of Heaven capital. Daybreak, an expert of the Invincible Realm, personally took action, but failed. An expert at the peak of the Thunder-Shocking Realm from the Purgatory of Heaven capital died in battle, and Daybreak was assassinated. He was seriously injured and might even die. So your decision was right. Since you've won, there's no need to take risks. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat. There were experts lurking in the Burning Legion? But why didn't they attack him? Even with his perception, he didn't notice any danger around him when fighting with Ramalan. What if the other party could really hide from his perception and suddenly attack him in the battle? Daybreak was even at risk of dying, which was enough to prove how terrible the assassins lurking in the Burning Legion were. The most important thing was that an expert at the peak of the Thunder-Shocking Realm from the Purgatory of Heaven capital died in battle. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and said in a low voice, Minister, who was the expert that the Purgatory of Heaven capital lost? The code name is Grey Dark. We're not familiar with him. Dongqing Wudi said slowly. Li Tianlan thought about it. He was not familiar with this code name, and he wasn't even sure if the other party was an old man from the Li family. Marshal Li, you've worked hard in this battle. We'll provide assistance to Tunan City as soon as possible. If you need anything, you can also ask. A strange voice sounded on the phone. I'm Chen Fangqing. Zhongzhou State will try its best to meet your requirements. Li Tianlan's mouth twitched, revealing a sneer. Thank you for your concern, Prime Minister. He said blandly, but at present, Emperor Dong's palace can still cope with it and doesn't need any support. We'll restore the order in Tunan City as soon as possible and protect the stability of Tunan City for Zhongzhou State. Protect Tunan for Zhongzhou State. After all, Li Tianlan was not a veteran in politics. He didn't bother to hide his words and directly stated his intention. This sentence was equivalent to telling all the directors of Zhongzhou State that from now on, everything in Tunan, including the 3 military bases, would belong to Emperor Dong's palace. We don't doubt Marshal Li's strength, but Marshal Li seems to have forgotten that Tunan City belongs to the Freedom Corps. I wonder when Marshal Li plans to return it? A gloomy voice rang out, and it was laced with some anger. Li Tianlan naturally couldn't forget this voice, but he asked knowingly, who's talking? The voice gave a muffled snort. I'm Gu Xingyun. Ha. Li Tianlan smiled. I thought it was the commander of the Freedom Corps who spoke. Your Highness Gu Xingyun, Commander Ning of the Freedom Corps didn't say when I'll return Tunan City. From what position do you ask me this question? Li Tianlan, don't be too domineering. The Freedom Corps belongs to Zhongzhou State, and Tiannan naturally belongs to Zhongzhou State. It doesn't belong to anyone. Gu Xingyun said coldly. Really? Li Tianlan directly interrupted him. Tunan belongs to Zhongzhou State. I agree with this matter, but who else in the world agrees? And since it belongs to Zhongzhou state, then I want to ask, when the Burning Core attacked Tunan, as the hidden guardian force of Zhongzhou state, as the special warfare center of Zhongzhou state, what was Kunlun City doing in the hours after the incident? You claim to be the war god of Zhongzhou state. Your Highness Gu Xingyun, what were you doing? Was it a dereliction of duty of Kunlun City this time? Was it a dereliction of duty of you, Gu Xingyun? Everyone glanced at Gu Xingyun, as if they didn't expect Li Tianlan's words to be so sharp. In everyone's impression, Li Tianlan seemed to have always been silent, and it could even be said that he was not good at talking. Gu Xingyun gritted his teeth and snorted. Li Tianlan was already a little impatient. As for the problem of Tunan City, I will communicate with Commander Ning Ziyuan in the near future. We will also negotiate the ownership of Tunan City. Everyone, we all think that Tiannan will belong to Zhongzhou state in the future, but it also means that Tiannan has no clear ownership at present. If I conquer Tiannan, I naturally have the right to occupy it. But don't forget, Emperor Dong's palace also belongs to Zhongzhou state. We will reach an agreement with the Freedom Corps as soon as possible. In this case, the communication should be done as soon as possible. Marshal Li, you should communicate more with the parliament. At present, we still have a lot of things to discuss with you. Since Tunan City is temporarily stabilized, why don't you go back to Yuzhou first? We will adjourn for the time being. The meeting will continue when you come over. In addition, Comrade Ning Ziyuan also has some questions to explain. You can come together and talk about the problem of Tunan on the way. Li Huaqing said with a smile. Li Tianlan slightly hesitated, then nodded and said, okay. The Freedom Corps will send a military plane to pick you up. See you later. Li Huaqing said. Li Tianlan answered and hung up the phone. He stood where he was and was silent for a long time. If there were no accidents, many controversial things should be settled when he returned to Yuzhou this time. For example, he destroyed the entire Tang family. For example, the storm he caused in Beihai province. For example, his rank of marshal. Another example was his status in Reki City and the follow-up of the Snowdance Corps. Of course, there were a series of problems in Tiannan and the ownership of Tunan City, as well as how much support the new city plan of Emperor Dong's palace would get from Zhongzhou state. There were even some problems of Samsara Palace. Li Huaqing was right. Now he and the parliament of Zhongzhou state did have a lot to communicate. And after this communication, his focus would also shift to Tiannan. He would use the wealth brought by the 5 Eastern European countries to develop his own foundation in Tiannan with peace of mind. Then there might be a long period of peace. Li Tianlan thought silently until Ning Qianqing's voice sounded behind him. Who called just now? Secretary General Bai, who is currently in the conference room of the Hidden Dragon Sea. He called me. Li Tianlan said casually. Oh. What did he say? Ning Qianqing's eyes became serious. At this time, Zhongzhou state held a high-level meeting, and the content of the discussion was self-evident. It's not clear on the phone. I'm going to Yuzhou. There are always some things to solve. Well, this time Uncle Ning will go with me. He coughed and looked at Ning Qianqing. I guess Uncle Ning will be punished this time. It was true. No matter how free Ning Ziyuan and the Freedom Corps were in Tiannan, they were still the power of Zhongzhou state. In any case, this time Li Tianlan took down Tunan alone, and the Freedom Corps didn't take any action from beginning to end. No matter how Ning Ziyuan explained, he couldn't change the fact. Once Tunan belonged to Emperor Dong's palace, the whole Zhongzhou state would be very passive. Dongxing Wudi might not say anything, but from the standpoint of an ally, Li Huaqing might not want to see Emperor Dong's palace expand too quickly. As for the Prince Group, Special Warfare Group, and even the Wang family of Beihai, they certainly didn't want to see this scene. So Ning Ziyuan's trip to Yuzhou wouldn't be too comfortable. The powerhouses in the parliament couldn't do anything to Li Tianlan, but they could teach Ning Ziyuan a lesson. Even if they vented their anger, Ning Ziyuan would at least be given a serious warning or a major demerit. But that was the situation, and it couldn't be too bad. As long as Emperor Dong's palace and Li Tianlan were in Tiannan, it was unlikely that the highest officer of the Freedom Corps would be replaced by someone else. Whether it was the Prince Group, Special Warfare Group, or the Wang family of Beihai, they wouldn't send their own people to take this position. That wasn't profit, but death. Did they really think that Li Tianlan didn't dare to kill people? I guess it'll be a major demerit at most. It won't be more serious. Ning Qianqing shook his head. As for feeling bad, he won't feel bad. His major demerit will change the foundation of Emperor Dong's palace. I'm afraid he'll laugh when he makes a review in the parliament. The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth twitched. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go." The sound of a helicopter came from the horizon. A helicopter flew over from afar and slowly landed near the hiding place. Li Tianlan walked into the cabin and suddenly froze. Ning Ziyuan, the commander of the Freedom Corps, was sitting in the cabin and looking at him with a smile. "Uncle Ning, why are you here?" Li Tianlan reached out his hand and shook hands with him. He thought the helicopter would pick him up first, and then pick up Ning Ziyuan to return to Yuzhou. He didn't expect Ning Ziyuan to come in person. "The Freedom Corps is noisy and in a mess now, so I came here for peace and quiet," Ning Ziyuan said with a smile, "and I heard that there are hiding places in Tunan City. I have to come and have a look and see the current situation in Tunan City." He looked down as he said this. The delicate and extremely dangerous hiding place was parked on the grass at this time, looking extremely quiet. Ning Ziyuan's eyes were a little surprised. "Your Highness, I really don't understand this." He shook his head as if he couldn't believe it. "This is the core armament of Star State. Where did you get it? And there are 10 of them. The last asset of the Samsara Palace," Li Tianlan said with a smile. After a quick hesitation, he still didn't choose to tell Ning Ziyuan about the new stream. It was not a matter of distrust, but it was obvious that the fewer people knew about the new stream, the better. After all, the new stream had a certain influence in Zhongzhou State. If he kept this trump card, it might play a greater role in the future. Besides, putting a religion together with so many advanced armaments would also arouse the vigilance of others. So, he simply said it was the Samsara Palace, which would be easier to accept. Ning Ziyuan's eyes were a little stern. He didn't doubt that these hiding places were from the Samsara Palace. But at present, the Samsara Palace was merging into Emperor Dong's palace faster and faster. First it was the saints, then the hiding places. Who knew what else would happen next? With these, the air domain of Tiannan will basically belong to Emperor Dong's palace in the future. Ning Ziyuan sighed with emotion. There was no doubt that the hiding places had become the most powerful weapon besides Li Tianlan. Sometimes, they were even more powerful than Li Tianlan. There was no military airport in Tiannan, and when Zhongzhou State and Annan State restrained each other, it was impossible for Annan State's fighter planes to enter the airspace of Tiannan. Annan State might send armed helicopters to the Burning Legion, but Annan State was a small place. It was easy to know the level of their armaments. Compared with the hiding places, the helicopters in service in Annan State were like an old car and a Ferrari. They couldn't pose any threat to the hiding places. As long as the hiding places were still there, Annan State might not have a large-scale war like the invasion of the Burning Legion for a long time. Because they couldn't afford to fight. Once the hiding places took off, each one was a real-life harvester. The more people there were, the more lethal they were. In the absence of large-scale conflicts, Emperor Dong's palace could handle some small-scale disputes more easily. Not to mention Li Tianlan's almost invincible strength. Even in Emperor Dong's palace, other experts were not to be trifled with. At least for now, in terms of internal experts, Emperor Dong's palace might not be as good as other superpowers, but in terms of quality, it was not bad. After all, in the current Emperor Dong's palace, there was not only Li Tianlan, but also Saint of the Invincible Realm. In addition, he was the young governor of Sai City. The 4 great sword masters of Mount Shu, Cool Breeze and Drifting Cloud, the Black Tortoise squad of Zhongzhou State stationed at the border all year round, the graduates of the two academies. This kind of power represented an absolutely perfect future. More than that. This is only part of it. Li Tianlan smiled. There's more. Ning Ziyuan raised his eyebrows and was a little surprised. He seemed to think of something and frowned. Your Highness, do you mean the transport plane? In the current situation in Tiannan, the transport plane is difficult to play a role. Apart from other things, its takeoff and landing is a big problem. Not the transport plane. Li Tianlan shook his head. I'm going to send the transport plane to Reki City. I'm talking about the hiding place. Ning Ziyuan's face suddenly changed. The hiding place. They were both third-generation stealth-armed helicopters. The hiding place came from Star State, while the hiding place came from Zhongzhou State. In fact, in international evaluation, the performance of the hiding place had always been slightly better than the hiding place. The advantages of the hiding place were its endurance and relative flexibility. But the advantage of the hiding place was that it had a better stealth system than the hiding place. When the stealth system was good enough, endurance and flexibility were not too important. Zhongzhou State agreed to support Li Tianlan's hiding place now? How was that possible? Ning Ziyuan thought for a moment, and his heart suddenly moved. He shouted, "The Wang family of Beihai." Li Tianlan laughed. Yes, the Wang family of Beihai. Ning Ziyuan sighed slightly. It seemed that many people did not notice that when Li Tianlan went to Beihai province, he had to explain. So far, there was no news about how important this explanation was and what price the Wang family of Beihai would pay. Obviously, the hiding place was the explanation that the Wang family of Beihai gave to Li Tianlan, or even just a part of the explanation. How many? Ning Ziyuan asked. A flying team, 5. Li Tianlan said, in addition, they will try to build a military airport for me in Tiannan. I don't think about a large airport for the time being, but an airport that can support the takeoff and landing of small fighter jets should be no problem. Ning Ziyuan gasped and said dryly, so once the airport is built, what the Wang family of Beihai promised you will be more than just the hiding place, right? Yes, there are about 10 stingers, but they can't be delivered until 3 years later. Li Tianlan said. Ning Ziyuan shook his head with a bitter smile. 3 years sounded far away, but it took a long time to build a military airport. Once the airport was built, some of the stingers must be delivered first. Stingers were carrier-based aircraft, fast, powerful, and small. Although there was no aircraft carrier in Tiannan, Tiannan itself was not big, and the advantages of carrier-based aircraft could be fully exerted. Hiding place, lurking place, and stingers. Tunnan. New city plan. Emperor Dong's palace. Ning Ziyuan was suddenly shocked. He suddenly realized that although Zhongzhou State had made a plan to let Emperor Dong's palace absorb the Freedom Corps, this plan might be faster than he thought. Now Emperor Dong's palace already had the prototype of a big force. And 3 years later, with the establishment of the military airport and the delivery of stingers, what would it be like? The most important thing was, once Li Tianlan entered the invincible realm in 3 years, how terrifying would he be? And 3 years later, it was the time for the new graduates of the 2 academies of Zhongzhou State to graduate. The group of people around Li Tianlan would also grow up. At that time, Emperor Dong's palace might be very mature. A strong leader, sufficient armaments, rich talent echelon, and top experts. 3 years. In 3 years at most, Emperor Dong's palace might have the prototype of a super force. This was a speed that was enough to stun everyone. But at this time, in Ning Ziyuan's view, it was completely reasonable. Ning Ziyuan took a deep breath, feeling a little complicated and a little emotional. Uncle Ning, I plan to use Tunnan City as the core of the new city plan. What do you think? Li Tianlan asked. This sentence was undoubtedly telling Ning Ziyuan that he wanted Tunnan City. Very good, the foundation of Tunnan City is good, but since it is a new city plan, the name should be changed. What do you plan to name the headquarters of Emperor Dong's palace in the future? Such a big city, and you want to call it Emperor Dong's palace? Ning Ziyuan asked. No. Li Tianlan shook his head. Looking at the outline of Tunan City that was getting farther and farther below, he said, this place will be called Xianyuan City from now on. He turned to look at Ning Ziyuan and said softly, I hope Qianqing can be the first mayor of Xianyuan City. Chapter 713. Ning Ziyuan looked at Li Tianlan quietly for a long time. Xianyuan City. With this title alone, Li Tianlan's intention had been clearly conveyed. In Gu Xingyan's eyes, this was the real ambition of a wolf. When the Li family was in charge of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State, the special warfare center of Zhongzhou State was Zhuanyuantai, which later became Kunlun City. Now that Li Tianlan had established Xianyuan City in Tiannan, his intention of opposing Kunlun City with tit for tat was extremely obvious. This was simply a violation of Kunlun City's bottom line. However, Ning Ziyuan had to admit that Tiannan was indeed a good place. Judging from the current situation that Zhongzhou State was facing, if the hub of the special warfare system was really going to be transferred, it was the most appropriate and most deterrent to build the new hub in Tiannan. After the chaos in Eastern Europe, Zhongzhou State firmly controlled the 5 countries in Eastern Europe. The Wang family of Beihai developed in Snow Country. Snow Country, the hegemon, had greatly reduced its deterrent to Zhongzhou State. Although they had to guard against East Island on the doorstep of Zhongzhou State, the Purgatory of Heaven capital had taken root in East Island. Even if Li Guangtu returned to Zhongzhou State, the forces of the Purgatory of Heaven capital could not be completely eliminated. In fact, the reason why Zhongzhou State wanted Li Guangtu to return to Zhongzhou State was also to completely take over the right to speak in the dark world of East Island with the power of the Purgatory of Heaven capital. Even if this thing couldn't become a reality for the time being, at least it was certain that in the game between Zhongzhou State and East Island, because of the Purgatory of Heaven capital, Zhongzhou State had taken the initiative. If it controlled the underground world of East Island, it would be put on the agenda by Zhongzhou State sooner or later. In this way, there were many small countries and the chaotic situation in Southeast Asia would become the primary concern of Zhongzhou State. If Xianyuan City really had a strong deterrent force in the future, it would be enough to change the situation in Southeast Asia according to the will of Zhongzhou State if it was built in Tiannan. Tiannan was indeed a good place. The best thing was that the establishment of Xianyuan City showed Li Tianlan's ambition. But today, Li Tianlan and Xianyuan City were not the special warfare center of Zhongzhou State. If Zhongzhou State settled here in advance, it could avoid the pressure of international public opinion to the greatest extent. In this way, the possibility of Zhongzhou State passing Li Tianlan's request was greatly increased. Gu Xingyan might oppose the establishment of Xianyuan City with all his might. Chen Fangqing, the leader of the Prince Group, might not oppose it. If Kunlun City had a lot of tricks in the dark in recent years because of its position, then the Prince Group, which had participated in the Li family's treason case, was undoubtedly more upright. As for Prime Minister Chen Fangqing, according to Ning Ziyuan's understanding of him, no matter what his position was, he was unlikely to oppose things that were good for Zhongzhou State. He was the Prime Minister of Zhongzhou State. The second was the leader of the Prince Group. He was a true politician who knew when to fight, when to compromise, and when to give support. In the face of something that was beneficial to the entire Zhongzhou State, Chen Fangqing could not oppose it, and he would not even hesitate. Even if it meant that he would have to face pressure from the Prince Group after he agreed. However, Chen Fangqing never went against his principles. This may be one of the reasons why Chen Fangqing has always been respected by the senior executives of major groups even though he is the leader of the Prince Group. Such a prime minister was a good thing, even a blessing, for Zhongzhou State. Therefore, Li Tianlan proposed to build Xianyuan City as soon as he conquered Tunan City. It seemed abrupt, but in fact, it was a mature idea with a great possibility of being adopted. However, what Ning Ziyuan did not expect was that Li Tianlan wanted his son, Ning Qianqing, to be the first mayor of Tunan City. Qianqing, Ning Ziyuan hesitated, unable to make a decision for a moment. Qianqing will be fine. Li Tianlan smiled. His voice was calm and confident. He has enough ability to be a good mayor. Ability. I'm worried about his age. Ning Ziyuan shook his head with a wry smile. He had never doubted his son's ability, just as Li Tianlan did not doubt Ning Qianqing's ability. Ning Qianqing's character was extremely steady and calm, but at the same time, he was energetic, open-minded, and had a deep mind. He could be said to be a commander with a big picture. If he was not capable, he would not have been valued by Dongqing Wudi, the god of massacre of Zhongzhou State, in the Border Control Corps when he and Ning Ziyuan had no contact. However, Ning Qianqing's talent was relatively mediocre when it came to martial arts. Ning Qianqing was now an expert at the peak of the fire-flaming realm at the age of 28. His realm was not low, and he could be regarded as a genius. However, when it came to martial arts, in Li Tianlan's eyes, it was inevitable that he was not strong enough. Since he entered the secular world, Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing were the first brothers to stand by his side. The former seemed to be entrusted by Yun Qinshi, the Phantom Sword Master, but Wei Kunlun, the Nirvana Sword Master, also secretly gave him support. The latter was undoubtedly the force that Dongqing Wudi sent to his side. Li Tianlan was indebted to Mount Shu and the Dongqing clan, and he also cherished his friendship with Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing. Li Beidian was the great void sword master of Mount Shu. In the field of martial arts, he was top-notch in both talent and talent. Now, he looked a little weaker by Li Tianlan's side. That was because Li Beidian's realm progress was a little slow, but his foundation was extremely stable. Now, Li Beidian was only half a step away from the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. Once he took this half a step, the great void sword at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm would not be much weaker than most of the half-step invincible realm experts. Ning Qianqing was not strong enough, but Li Beidian did not have this problem at all. Unless there was a very serious accident, Li Beidian would definitely be able to enter the invincible realm within 10 years and become Li Tianlan's real right-hand man. Based on their relationship and the current position of Mount Shu, Li Beidian would be much more reliable than Lin Yuxian. As for Ning Qianqing, it was destined to be difficult for him to enter the invincible realm, or even impossible. His greatest value was not his own strength, but his rare leadership talent. Li Tianlan had originally considered Ning Qianqing's position in the future. At the beginning, Li Tianlan planned to hand over the future elite force of Emperor Dong's palace to Ning Qianqing and make him the real commander of Emperor Dong's palace in the future. But now with such a huge opportunity in Tunan, Li Tianlan did not hesitate to push Ning Qianqing to the position of mayor. As for the age problem, Li Tianlan smiled indifferently and said disapprovingly, "Uncle Ning, don't forget that this is Tiannan." Ning Ziyuan was stunned, and his eyes lit up slightly. This was Tiannan. This was undoubtedly the most crucial sentence. It did not belong to Zhongzhou State. After taking Tunan, this was Li Tianlan's own territory. It was entirely up to Li Tianlan to decide who would be the mayor. As for the age, it might be considered in Zhongzhou State. But in Tiannan, Zhongzhou State could not consider this aspect at all for the time being. This is an opportunity for Qianqing. Li Tianlan said softly, "It is also an opportunity for me and for Emperor Dong's palace. Emperor Dong's palace has developed to this point, and everything should be on the right track." He looked at Ning Ziyuan and said softly, "For example, setting up your own group." Ning Qianqing was suddenly shocked and even stood up directly. "Group?" he asked in reply. "Of course." Li Tianlan laughed and said, "With Qianqing as the core, a group that belongs to me." "Uncle Ning, do you think this road is very familiar?" Li Tianlan had a good relationship with the academics now. According to the original promise, Li Tianlan was even a member of the academics now. However, Li Tianlan's growth was too fast, and the academics also sensibly regarded him as a future ally. In the past few years, the academics' support for Li Tianlan could not be little. And not only the academics. As the son-in-law of the Dongqing clan, the giant group now completely supported Li Tianlan, and it could even be said to support him at all costs. Such a sign was too obvious. The transfer of Zhou Yuanshan, the future leader of the giant group, to Lin and as the governor was the clearest signal. This kind of action even faintly showed that Li Tianlan was the future core of the giant group. But after all, that was only a possibility in the future. So people realized the support of the academics and the giant group for Li Tianlan, but it was difficult to see these things as Li Tianlan's foundation. Because it was not his own power. No matter how close an ally was, it was different from a power that completely belonged to him. If it was not his own, it represented a variable. This was a truth that everyone could understand. If Emperor Dong's palace wanted to develop in the future, it must have its own power. Such power included wealth, status, territory, force, military power, and naturally, political power. For any big force, it was necessary to have its own political group. With Xianyuan City, Li Tianlan had put the establishment of his own group on the agenda. Such a path was more than just familiar. Ning Ziyuan shook his head with a wry smile. This was almost the path that the Wang family of Beihai had walked for hundreds of years. With a template, it would naturally go smoothly. Smoothly. The path of the Wang family of Beihai. Ning Ziyuan shook his head with emotion, reached out his hand to Li Tianlan, and said solemnly, "Thank you." Li Tianlan shook his head and said softly, "I should thank you, uncle." Ning Ziyuan shook his head with a smile. "I owe seniorly, so I naturally have to pay it back. Your Highness, from now on, we are on the same side, so there is no need to say anything polite." He didn't think he deserved Li Tianlan's thanks. Although he had to pay a lot in the future development of Emperor Dong's palace. But this was what he owed Li Honghe back then, and he had long been psychologically prepared to pay it back. The establishment of Xianyuan City this time meant that the Freedom Corps lost a city. Gu Xingyun would not let him go. Even if Chen Fengqing supported Li Tianlan, he did not mind giving him a serious punishment. And it could be foreseen that this was just the beginning. With the development of Emperor Dong's palace, the Freedom Corps was bound to make more concessions to Li Tianlan in the future. Although this was a plan of Zhongzhou State, it was actually not glorious. In a plan full of conspiracies and ambitions, as the executor, Ning Ziyuan was likely to have a bad end. Speaking of life and death, it was still too far away. But the best result was that Ning Ziyuan would certainly not have a good reputation. But the return that Li Tianlan gave him was equally generous. Ning Ziyuan, who had passed the age of knowing his destiny, did not want to pursue anything else. He only had one son. If Ning Qianqing could develop the Ning family and even let the family continue to prosper, Ning Ziyuan would die without regrets. There was no doubt about Li Tianlan's potential. A new group with Ning Qianqing as the core, a new group that belonged to the Heavenly Sun. As the core of the group, Ning Ziyuan was looking forward to what kind of glory he would have in the future. Of course. Li Tianlan smiled and said softly, "But uncle is wrong. This is not the old path of the Wang family of Beihai, or at least, not all of it. Snow country hundreds of years ago." Ha! Ning Ziyuan suddenly understood. His heart suddenly trembled, and he was a little excited. The current situation was indeed different from the beginning of the Wang family of Beihai. Furthermore, it was a very big difference. At that time, Snow Country was powerful and far stronger than it was now. As one of the most powerful hegemonic countries in the world, the Wang family of Beihai took Beihai from Snow Country, which was tantamount to snatching food from a tiger's mouth. And at that time, Zhongzhou State was not the most powerful country in the world. The Wang family of Beihai took the land from Snow Country and East Island, and then returned to Zhongzhou State. The process was full of ups and downs, and the whole process lasted for nearly 20 years. And it was under the awe of the two heavenly sons. The ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai, the heavenly sun. And the patriarch of Zhuanyuantai, who was no less than the heavenly sun, joined forces to make Beihai the youngest province of Zhongzhou State. And now. First of all, Annan State was not Snow Country. The two countries were like heaven and earth. And now Zhongzhou State had become the most powerful country with few rivals, which also meant that the return process was not too bumpy. What Emperor Dong's palace had to do next was very simple. It was to accelerate. To accelerate the development at all costs and enhance its strength. To speed up the process of returning to Zhongzhou state. Now Li Tianlan had Tunan City. Ning Qianqing was the mayor. And what would happen when Emperor Dong's palace took Ningbian or even the whole Tiannan? The land of more than 30,000 square kilometers was the area of a small province. At that time, Ning Qianqing would naturally become the governor. Ning Qianqing was 28 years old this year. And the process of Emperor Dong's palace taking over Tiannan was destined to not be long. 3 years, 5 years? At that time, Ning Qianqing was only in his early 30s. A governor in his early 30s. This had broken the record of Zhongzhou state. And as Tiannan was included in the territory of Zhongzhou state, Ning Qianqing's identity would also change. He would become the speaker of Tiannan province of Zhongzhou state and officially enter the high-rise buildings of Zhongzhou state. The return of the new land was naturally a big event that shocked the whole country. Even if Tiannan was not as big as Beihai province because of its small area, the first speaker of the new province was bound to enter the parliament of Zhongzhou state and become one of the more than 20 MPs of Zhongzhou state. At that time, Ning Qianqing was about 35 years old. A 35-year-old MP of Zhongzhou state. This position was already enough to support the development of a new group. This was Li Tianlan's blueprint for the future and also his return to Ning Ziyuan. Such a return was so generous that it was even possible for Ning Qianqing, at the age of 40, to become the youngest council member of Zhongzhou state since the founding of Zhongzhou state. And such a pattern was also very familiar. Just like the current Wang family of Beihai and the 7 sword-holding families of Beihai province. It could be said that from now on, the Ning family could already be regarded as the sword-holding family of Emperor Dong's palace. Such a prospect was worthy of Ning Ziyuan's solemn thanks. Ning Ziyuan was lost in thought, and his expression was full of undisguised fascination. We will succeed. Li Tianlan chuckled and said, at this point, there is no possibility of failure. Ning Ziyuan also laughed and felt somewhat gratified. Indeed, as Li Tianlan had said, Emperor Dong's palace had no possibility of failure at this stage. In this era, no one could stop the footsteps of Emperor Dong's palace and Li Tianlan. His success was inevitable, and the only thing he needed was time. And only time. And Li Tianlan, who was only 22 years old this year, had the least lack of time. Li Tianlan's combat capability was terrible enough to make anyone afraid. However, the most frightening thing about him was his young age. This was the most frightening enemy. Anyway, Your Highness, I still want to thank you. Ning Ziyuan said softly. Li Tianlan waved his hand and said softly, Qianqing is my brother. No matter how high I stand in the future, there must always be people around me that I can completely trust. This position of mayor is my wedding gift to Qianqing. Ning Qianqing and Yu Qingyan had been together for more than 3 years. Both Yu Donglai and Ning Ziyuan were very satisfied with Ning Qianqing and Yu Qingyan. The two families had already planned for them to get married next year. This boy, Ning Ziyuan laughed and said, both career and love have been fruitful. Life is good. Li Tianlan smiled. At this moment, he thought of Dongqing Rushi, who was in a coma, and Wang Yuetong, who was still in the Wang family of Beihai. He looked out of the window and stopped talking. It was nearly 4:00 in the afternoon when Li Tianlan and Ning Ziyuan officially arrived in Yuzhou. When the whole dark world was in chaos, without any pause, the two directly entered the hidden Dragon Sea and appeared in the conference room of Zhongzhou State's parliament. The meeting began in the morning. Although the meeting was adjourned for a few hours, none of the council members left. No one had the time to eat either. Taking advantage of this time, the council quickly formed a document regarding Tiannan and passed it to every member of the council. Then, it was passed again to the governor, requesting everyone to unify their thoughts and unite against the external threat. When Li Tianlan and Ning Ziyuan were brought to the conference room by the secretary, Li Huaqing was on the phone with Wu Jingmin, the vice prime minister of Zhongzhou State, who was in charge of the diplomatic work of Zhongzhou State. He asked the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to emphasize its position and announce Zhongzhou State's attitude to the outside world. Seeing Li Tianlan come in, Li Huaqing smiled and waved his hand, motioning him to sit down. Under everyone's gaze, Li Tianlan walked around the conference room and finally sat next to Gu Xingyun. Gu Xingyun's face twisted, and he couldn't help but move his body. Dongxing Wudi and Li Huaqing smiled at the same time. "Your Highness, long time no see." Glancing at Gu Xingyun, Li Tianlan greeted him with a chuckle, looking extremely affectionate. "I'd rather not see you." Gu Xingyun was expressionless. "Marshal Li, the farther away we are, the better." "That won't do." Li Tianlan shook his head and said in a faint voice, "Today's meeting is a little sensitive. I'm afraid that your Highness will be very emotional. If I'm here, at least I can ensure that your Highness won't be too impulsive." "Really?" Gu Xingyun glanced at him with a sneer. "I think I'll be more excited if you're here." "That won't happen." Li Tianlan shook his head solemnly and looked honest. "Although it's not the first time I've been here, it's the first time I've attended a meeting of the council. It's inevitable that a newcomer doesn't know the rules. And I'm in a bad mood now. Your Highness, you'd better be careful with what you say, or I'll do it." Gu Xingyun's face suddenly turned purplish red. Threat. This was a naked threat. This feeling was extremely weird. Such a scene was too bizarre. Gu Xingyun had been sitting in this conference room for more than 20 years, and he had never received such a threat. "Be careful with what you say, or I'll beat you." What was this? What was this? What the hell was this? Childish, boring, rogue, shameless. This was the highest place in Zhongzhou State, but Li Tianlan's words dragged it down to the level of a street fight. Gu Xingyun even felt that he was going crazy. The point was that Li Tianlan didn't lower his voice at all. Everyone present, including the secretary, could hear his threat. Gu Xingyun didn't even know what to do for a while. Should he fly into a rage? Li Tianlan was a newcomer, but his combat capability was there. In his current state of serious injury, he really couldn't stand Li Tianlan's torment. It was Li Tianlan's first time to attend this kind of meeting. If he really took action, as long as Gu Xingyun didn't die, Zhongzhou State would not care too much. After all, Tiannan was too important to Zhongzhou State. That was to say, Li Tianlan could really take action. He could really take action. If he got angry now and asked Li Tianlan to press him down and beat him in the conference room, Gu Xingyun's dignity would really be discredited. And such a thing, for a 22-year-old boy, he could really do it. He could really do it. But, should he just bear it? That would also be discredited. Perhaps everyone would think that he was afraid of Li Tianlan. The corners of Gu Xingyun's mouth kept twitching. A bloody sweetness came out of his throat, but he swallowed it down. Just one sentence. Just a sentence that couldn't be put in public, but it made Gu Xingyun in a dilemma, which was extremely shameful. Well, now is not the time to joke. Li Huaqing, who put down the phone, gave a dry cough. He wanted to be more serious, but when he glanced around, he found that almost all the counselors and even the secretary had an unbearable smile on their faces. The serious conference room suddenly became a little happy because of Li Tianlan's words. Indeed, it seemed that since the founding of the People's Republic, there had never been such a thing like, "Watch your mouth, or I'll beat you up," in this conference room. It could be heard as a joke. Li Huaqing took a deep breath, held back his laughter, and waved his hand. At this time, it was really not suitable for him to say anything more to Li Tianlan. He glanced around and suddenly fell on Ning Ziyuan. Li Huaqing narrowed his eyes slightly and said calmly, "Comrade Ning Ziyuan, when Emperor Dong's palace was fighting in Tunan City, why didn't you organize the army to cooperate with the attack of Emperor Dong's palace? This efficiency makes the council very disappointed in you. Why are you so slow?" Dongxing Wudi glanced at Ning Ziyuan. Chen Fangqin, Gu Xingyun, Wan Qingyun. The counselors of the Prince Group, the Special Warfare Group, and the Wang family of Beihai frowned at the same time. Although Li Huaqing's words were an accusation, he set the tone as soon as he spoke. It was not that Ning Ziyuan did not fight back, nor did he deliberately delay. It was just that he was slow. He was a little slow to stop the counterattack. It was obvious that he was trying to protect Ning Ziyuan with this sentence. Because the Freedom Corps is in a mess now. Ning Ziyuan naturally also heard the meaning of protection in Li Huaqing's words. He smiled and slowly said, "This time, the Freedom Corps was raided by the Burning Legion and suffered heavy losses. Many defeated soldiers from Tunan City need to be dealt with. Moreover, it happened suddenly, and the people in the Corps are in a panic. I don't think it is suitable to fight back too quickly. We have to stabilize the situation in Ningbian first." Of course, from the perspective of Emperor Dong's palace, the Freedom Corps did handle the situation improperly. For this, I want to apologize to His Highness Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan smiled and waved his hand. But I clearly heard that after the war broke out, the fighting intent within the Freedom Corps was very strong. Comrade Wang Zhaojian once expressed to you that he wanted to fight as soon as possible, but you refused. Wan Qingyun narrowed his eyes and stared at Ning Ziyuan, his voice cold. The Freedom Corps is under the responsibility of the Corps commander. Ning Ziyuan said calmly, "I know my army better than anyone else. A moment of passion can't decide anything. It can only cause greater losses. In that case, stability should be the first priority. And I believe in the fighting ability of His Highness Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace. It has been proved that Emperor Dong's palace did take Tunan City and beat back the Freedom Corps. But it was Marshal Li who took Tunan City. From the perspective of the Freedom Corps lost Tunan City. Commander Ning Ziyuan, you are responsible for this matter. And the ownership of Tunan City has now become very troublesome." Dongqing Wudi suddenly said. Ning Ziyuan's responsibility could not be avoided at all. This was something that everyone could predict, so Dongqing Wudi simply said it. He clearly pointed out that the ownership of Tunan City was very troublesome, which also meant that he admitted the possibility that Tunan City might belong to Li Tianlan. From this point of view, Dongqing Wudi had begun to speak for Li Tianlan. He could not wait. "It's not troublesome." Ning Ziyuan shook his head and said slowly, "On the way here, I have communicated with Marshal Li. Since we are all colleagues of Zhongzhou State, it is not a big deal whether Tunan City falls into the hands of Emperor Dong's palace or the Freedom Corps, as long as it is not in the hands of hostile forces." Gu Xingyun's heart suddenly trembled. He said furiously, "Ning Ziyuan, what do you mean?" "I mean, on behalf of the Freedom Corps, I am willing to hand over the defense of Tunan City to His Highness Li Tianlan. In the communication just now, His Highness Li Tianlan has promised that Emperor Dong's palace will stay in Tunan City in the future to help share the pressure of the Freedom Corps." Ning Ziyuan's voice was slow, but it was like a clap of thunder that rolled through the conference room. But this was just the beginning. Li Tianlan's voice had already sounded after Ning Ziyuan. "Yes, after I communicated with Commander Ning, we have always thought that the Burning Legion is very powerful. It is difficult to resist the attack of invincible realm experts with only the Freedom Corps. But Emperor Dong's palace and the Freedom Corps can cooperate. Tunan City will be under the charge of Emperor Dong's palace in the future." President, Minister Dongsheng, I now apply to the Parliament of Zhongzhou State for Emperor Dong's palace to be in charge of everything in Tunan City. In addition, I apply to change the name of Tunan City. From now on, Tunan City will be the headquarters of Emperor Dong's palace. From now on, Tunan will be officially renamed Xianyuan City. It was earth-shattering. Xianyuan City. Li Huaqing and Dongqing Wudi were stunned at the same time. Chen Fengqi narrowed his eyes. Gu Xingyun's expression changed dramatically. In any case, he did not expect Li Tianlan to act so fast. Li Tianlan had just taken down Tunan, and Li Tianlan had already begun to think about the future. Xianyuan City? No. Gu Xingyun suddenly stood up. I don't agree with this application. Tunan is Tunan of Zhongzhou State, not someone's private territory. Li Tianlan, what do you mean by making Tunan the headquarters of Emperor Dong's palace? You are simply a wolf with wild ambitions, you. Buzz. A clear buzzing sound rang in the conference room. Li Tianlan raised his palm, his face expressionless. The dazzling sword intent gathered in Li Tianlan's hand in an instant. Under the bright light, Li Tianlan's hand seemed to have a belt of light shining with various colors in an instant. The sword intent was like running water, condensed into a substance, extremely soft. Li Tianlan held the sword intent as if holding a long whip. Without any hesitation, his palm shook, and the long whip directly lashed at Gu Xingyun. Crack. Gu Xingyun, whose face changed dramatically, raised his hand subconsciously. The long whip of sword intent lashed directly on his hand. His skin and flesh were torn, and blood was flying. Li Tianlan turned his head and looked at him indifferently, saying calmly, "Say that again?" All the people present were stunned. He made a move. Li Tianlan really made a move. This seemed to be just the beginning. Li Tianlan had already stood up. The sharp sword energy constantly gathered toward the long whip in Li Tianlan's hand. "Tianlan, calm down." Dongxing Wudi's voice suddenly sounded. The incomparably sharp aura suddenly disappeared. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes, wiped the blood off Gu Xingyun's hand, and laughed. "Don't be so shameless." He whispered, "You are no match for me now, so be careful what you say, and don't humiliate yourself." He patted Gu Xingyun on the shoulder, pressed his body, and directly pressed him on the seat. Gu Xingyun's expression was stiff, and his eyes seemed to be spewing fire. Li Tianlan remained calm and whispered, "I can slap your hand this time, and I dare to slap your face next time." "Your Highness, do you believe it?" Li Tianlan. Gu Xingyun stared at Li Tianlan, and his eyes were extremely ferocious. Li Tianlan smiled and said lightly, "You'd better not talk next. This is a matter between Emperor Dong's palace and Zhongzhou State, understand?" He straightened up and said calmly, "The establishment of Xianyuan City is beneficial to Zhongzhou State. I guarantee in the name of my grandfather that Xianyuan City and Emperor Dong's palace will fulfill their obligations and responsibilities. I can assure the Parliament of Zhongzhou State that with the establishment of Xianyuan City, the whole Tiannan will belong to Zhongzhou State in 5 years at most." Chapter 714. In 5 years at most, the entire Tiannan would belong to Zhongzhou State. Since the emergence of Tiannan in Southeast Asia, no one had ever said something like that. There was no doubt that this was the most powerful promise and the one that Zhongzhou State most wanted to hear. Li Tianlan's voice was very calm. He didn't pretend to be excited, but everyone could hear his lofty sentiments and lofty aspirations in his words. It was almost absolute confidence. No one dared to ignore this. And now Li Tianlan himself was no longer a figure that could be ignored. "Marshal Li, are you really confident?" Just as Li Tianlan's voice fell, when everyone was still thinking, Prime Minister Chen Fangqing of Zhongzhou State had already sat up straight, looked at Li Tianlan, and asked seriously. His eyes were very solemn, with a touch of undisguised expectation. Li Tianlan glanced at him and felt a little emotional. He had heard of Chen Fangqing's character, but he did not expect that the other party's response would be so straightforward. The 9 directors of Zhongzhou State's parliament could be said to be the 9 pillars of Zhongzhou State today, and each of them deserved respect. But in detail, Chen Fangqing could be said to be the most simple person. The position of prime minister could be said to be well deserved. Wang Qingyun, who was in charge of the supervision of Zhongzhou State, and Ji Wenzhang, who was in charge of the party affairs of Zhongzhou State, were the 2 directors of the Southeast Group. Because the Wang family of Beihai was too powerful, although these 2 were the leaders of the Southeast Group, they often had to consider the interests of Beihai province and the will of the Wang family of Beihai. President Li Huaqing and Hua Zhengyang, who met for the first time in Zhongzhou State, were also under great pressure. As the leaders of the academics, the 2 could even be said to be the most stressed of the 9 directors. Compared with the deep-rooted Prince Group and the Southeast Group, the Academics was just a group that rose in recent decades. It was a typical representative of grassroots origin with a serious lack of foundation. In the beginning, it could be said that it was completely supported by Li Huaqing's charm. 7 years as president, 5 years as a director, and 3 years as a member of parliament. All in all, Li Huaqing had been in the central system of Zhongzhou state for less than 20 years, which was also the fastest development of the Academics. Now Li Huaqing was approaching the age of retirement, but the scale of the Academics was still slightly inferior to that of the Prince Group. Li Huaqing needed to consider the overall situation of Zhongzhou state, but he also needed to consider the survival of the Academics after his retirement, so sometimes it was inevitable that he would be in a dilemma. Department head Zhou Yunhai, who represented the Northern Bloc, could be said to be extremely neutral. The Northern Bloc was the weakest, so Zhou Yunhai kept an extremely low profile. He only quietly guarded his own bloc and went with the flow. The Giant Group could be said to be the largest of the 6 groups, but the largest did not have the strongest cohesion, so that the Giant Group had always been extremely bloated. In the past few years, it was Zhou Mulan who had been supporting the overall situation. Although Dongqing Wudi had been a counselor for many years, he had only been a director for a short time. At present, he was in the process of controlling the army headquarters by force, so he did not make much noise about things outside the army headquarters for the time being. Chairman Guo Wendian of the Prince Group could be said to be the real leader of the Prince Group. Although his ranking was behind Qin Fangqing, he coordinated most of the internal affairs of the group. And Prime Minister Qin Fangqing. There was no doubt that he came from the Prince Group, but most of the time, his style of doing things did not have too many traces of the group. Qin Fangqing was majestic and extremely fair. During his 7 years as Prime Minister, he rarely got angry with harsh words. But every time the Prime Minister got angry, it was enough to shock the whole Zhongzhou state. In 7 years, the Prime Minister had personally killed 6 senior officials at the Governor-General level, and 2 of them were actually from the Prince Group. This kind of justice often made people subconsciously ignore his position. In the case that the Prince Group had Guo Wendian, most of the time his eyes fell on the overall situation of Zhongzhou state, and what he protected was the interests of the whole Zhongzhou state. No matter how much Li Tianlan disliked the Prince Group, he could not hate Qin Fangqing. He nodded and said seriously, "I can guarantee it." Where does Marshal Li's confidence come from? Guo Wendian said with a smile, without any anger in his tone. "I think the hidden ones who appeared on the battlefield can explain part of the problem," Li Tianlan said calmly. "In the following time, I will take over part of the power of the Samsara Palace and the Purgatory of Heaven capital, which can also explain part of the problem. And I have reached an agreement with the Wang family of Beihai. The Wang family of Beihai feels obliged to contribute to the consolidation of the border forces of Zhongzhou state. Mrs. Wang personally promised to support part of the armaments and some economic support of Emperor Dong's palace. In addition, the Wang family of Beihai will build a military airport and a gene potion laboratory in Tiannan in the near future, and these will become part of Emperor Dong's palace." Li Tianlan continued. His voice was still very soft, but every word he said was like a clap of thunder, causing everyone's ears to buzz. The appearance of the hidden ones could indeed explain a lot of problems. But Li Tianlan was about to take over the Samsara Palace and a part of the Purgatory, which no one was sure about at the moment. In fact, no one could guarantee how much power the Samsara Palace had left with the fall of the Master of Samsara Palace, and whether it would accept Li Tianlan's leadership. However, the high-profile saint and knight who joined the Samsara Palace, and today's hidden ones, could already explain Li Tianlan's leadership in the Samsara Palace. The Purgatory of Heaven capital, a superpower that had just risen in recent years, could be said to be the product of the Li family's nirvana rebirth. Now Li Hong had died, Li Guangtu was seriously injured, and another invincible realm expert, Daybreak, was not even sure whether he was alive or dead. At this time, it would not be difficult for Li Tianlan to attack the Purgatory of Heaven capital. There was no doubt that he could take over a part of the Purgatory of Heaven capital. The question was, how big was the so-called part? And the Wang family of Beihai. Armament support, economic support, the establishment of a military airport, and even the core gene potion laboratory of the Wang family of Beihai would be set up in Tiannan and belong to Li Tianlan. Wan Qingyun and Ji Wenjiang's faces instantly became extremely ugly. There was no doubt that this was the harvest of Li Tianlan's trip to Beihai. This trip not only made the Wang family of Beihai lose an invincible realm expert, but also pressed the neck of the Wang family of Beihai to make summer solstice lower her head. The harvest that Li Tianlan said was destined to be a part of it. They didn't dare to think or even ask what the Wang family of Beihai had to pay secretly. The most important thing is, Li Tianlan's voice continued, within 5 years, I will definitely enter the invincible realm. At that time, I will be in Tiannan and accept the challenge of all the invincible realm experts in the dark world. Everyone's face changed slightly. 5 years later, Li Tianlan would only be 27 years old. A 27-year-old invincible realm expert, and not an ordinary invincible realm expert. Now, Li Tianlan could crush the invincible realm experts on the holy list without breaking through. Once he broke through the current realm, he might not need to stabilize his realm at all, and he could have the combat capability no less than the peak of the invincible realm. Such a Tiannan, such a Emperor Dong's palace. At this moment, even Hua Jingyang, the leader of the academics, flashed a trace of fear in his eyes, not to mention Guo Wentian, Ji Wenjiang, and others. And Gu Xingyun, His Highness Gu Xingyun, who had been threatened by Li Tianlan with force in the meeting and had lost all his face, looked pale at this time. Everyone, I'm saying this to tell the parliament that the future of Emperor Dong's palace is worth looking forward to. Today's Emperor Dong's palace is very young, but it doesn't mean that we are weak. Specifically, in Tiannan, we have invincible realm experts, invincible realm combat capability, rich talent echelons, strong economic strength, advanced weapons and equipment. Emperor Dong's palace has everything it should have. We already have all the basic conditions to control Tiannan. The only thing we need is time. Li Tianlan's voice paused, and then he continued, maybe there is support from all of you. What does Marshal Li want? It was Chen Fangqing again. The Prime Minister of Zhongzhou State didn't seem to see Gu Xingyun's pale face and Guo Wentian's dissatisfied eyes at all. He asked straightforwardly. Prime Minister, you don't have to be so polite. I can't afford to be called Marshal Li. In the future, my energy must be focused on Tiannan. My energy is limited, and I can't deal with too many things of Zhongzhou State's military and special warfare system for the time being. So I'm here to make a request. I request to resign from the position of Marshal of Zhongzhou State's Special Warfare System and Commander of the Snowdance Corps. Li Tianlan shook his head and said in a flat tone. Chen Fangqing was stunned. Everyone was stunned. No one expected that Li Tianlan would resign at this time. He not only gave up the leadership of the Snowdance Corps, but also the position of Marshal. Although Marshal was only a military rank, in Tiannan, it was a higher military rank than the commander of the Freedom Corps. This also meant that even if Li Tianlan didn't hold any position, he could use the name of Marshal to control the Freedom Corps at critical moments. But thinking of the relationship between Li Tianlan and Ning Ziyuan, it really didn't matter whether he wanted the rank of Marshal or not. Chen Fangqing thought for a while, turned to look at Gu Xingyun, and asked, Your Highness Gu Xingyun, what do you think of this matter? Gu Xingyun opened his mouth. The almost invisible sword intent completely enveloped his body in an instant. Li Tianlan's eyes swept over with a faint smile. Gu Xingyun gritted his teeth. After a long time, he said word by word, I agree with Comrade Li Tianlan's resignation. You can resign. Li Huaqing said slowly, but Tianlan, according to the current performance of Emperor Dong's palace, it should be difficult for Zhongzhou State to give you enough support in a short time. What do you want? Order. Li Tianlan said calmly, an order that can really guarantee the smooth operation of Emperor Dong's palace. I want the parliament to agree to the establishment of Shenyuan City in Emperor Dong's palace and give necessary support. In addition, I want to recommend a rare talent to the parliament. He glanced at Ning Ziyuan, who was silent, and said slowly, I hope Ning Qianqing can be the first mayor of Shenyuan City. He glanced at Gu Xingyun. Gu Xingyun's eyes seemed to be spewing fire. Li Huaqing raised his eyebrows slightly and didn't speak for a while. I agree. Dongxing Wudi said slowly, I know Ning Qianqing. He is capable of being the mayor. Li Tianlan smiled and was about to speak when a steady voice suddenly sounded, I disagree. Chen Fangqing. It was still Chen Fangqing. Because of an emergency, this chapter doesn't have 8,000 words. I want it to last at least a week. Chapter 7:15. There was a flash of doubt in Li Tianlan's eyes. He glanced at Chen Fangqing. Chen Fangqing was also looking at him, smiling, and his eyes were full of calmness. Li Tianlan seemed to understand. He smiled and said nothing. I agree to establish Xianyuan City in Tiannan. Chen Fangqing's voice was soft. But Ning Qianqing, minister, has he been in the Border Control Corps before? Dongxing Wudi lowered his eyelids and said lightly, he was indeed in the Border Control Corps a few years ago. He is a very calm young man. He has been in the Sky Academy these years, and now he must be more mature than before. Chen Fangqing didn't seem to understand Dongxing Wudi's meaning at all. He just chuckled and said, in that case, Ning Qianqing has always been a soldier. The situation in Tiannan is very complicated now, and the identity of Emperor Dong's palace is very sensitive. As the mayor, he has to coordinate all aspects. This is a very difficult test for Ning Qianqing. After all, he is still too young. I think we should send a more mature and steady mayor to Tiannan to handle things in Tiannan while ensuring the interests of Emperor Dong's palace and prepare for 5 years later. 5 years later. That was the time when Li Tianlan promised that Tiannan would completely belong to Zhongzhou State. Ning Ziyuan looked at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan shook his head imperceptibly and said calmly, Prime Minister, who is more suitable to be the mayor of Tiannan? Chen Fangqing agreed to establish Xianyuan City for the sake of the overall situation of Zhongzhou State, but it didn't mean that the Prime Minister really appreciated Li Tianlan. The establishment of Xianyuan City could be said to be the biggest move that Zhongzhou State had made in Tiannan in more than 3 years. After all, Tiannan was not Zhongzhou State. It was a newly established system without a speaker, and the mayor was the real leader. But the whole Tiannan was the foundation of the province. Once the first mayor and the first governor returned, they were destined to enter the Zhongzhou State Parliament. And with Li Tianlan's full support, the MP who entered the parliament had at least an 80% chance of becoming a director of the parliament. In such a way, Tiannan already had the foundation of a large group. Once Ning Qianqing entered the parliament, he didn't even need to become a director. He could promote talents from Tiannan to various departments of Zhongzhou State on a large scale. This process might be long, but it was destined to be vigorous. And as Li Tianlan became more and more powerful, no one could stop the rise of the new group. Chen Fangqing wanted to see Tiannan become a part of Zhongzhou State, but he didn't want to see a new group in Zhongzhou State. In particular, this group was headed by Li Tianlan. Ning Qianqing could not. He would even oppose anyone who approached Li Tianlan. And from the bottom of his heart, Chen Fangqing was telling the truth. In his opinion, Ning Qianqing was indeed too young to handle the complicated situation in Tiannan. Sending a mature and steady mayor over was also responsible for the cause of Zhongzhou State. All kinds of thoughts kept flashing in Chen Fangqing's mind. Xianyuan City was undoubtedly the key to Tiannan. If Tiannan really became a province of Zhongzhou State in the future, Xianyuan City was destined to be the provincial capital of Tiannan. Looking at the whole Zhongzhou State, the leaders of provincial capital cities were all senior officials at the level of provincial councillors and deputy governors. Besides, they were often the first candidates for the position of the provincial government. He was the first mayor of Xianyuan City. In such a sensitive period, his rank was naturally no exception. Deputy governor rank. In the eyes of the giants at the top, this level was not an indispensable figure, but at least they would not be ignored. Among so many senior officials at the level of deputy governor in Zhongzhou State, it was very easy to find a few people with top-notch abilities. Not only the deputy governor rank, but also the second-level successors that the major groups worked hard to cultivate should also consider the possibility of promotion. The position of mayor of Tiannan could be said to be the most valuable position at the level of deputy governor in Zhongzhou state. Because as long as one held this position and gained a firm foothold in Tiannan, it was equivalent to holding a ticket directly to the Zhongzhou state parliament. The price to pay for this ticket was also very high. If the person holding this position was not one of Li Tianlan's people, it meant offending Li Tianlan. But compared with the identity of a counselor and offending Li Tianlan, the former was undoubtedly much more important. And even if he was not one of Li Tianlan's people, he could still cooperate with Li Tianlan in his work in Tiannan. Chen Fangqing straightened out the relationship in the shortest time possible. In such a sensitive position, it was necessary to have top abilities in all aspects, but also enough to not be afraid of Li Tianlan, or even Li Tianlan's background in the future. Only in this way could he keep Li Tianlan in check in Tiannan. In this way, there would be a lot less such candidates. Chen Fangqing immediately recalled the people in the prince group who met this condition. Just when he had already identified the candidates, he suddenly saw Li Tianlan's eyes. Li Tianlan was looking at him, his eyes gently fluctuating, and he seemed to be smiling. In an instant, Chen Fangqing's whole heart suddenly sank. The moment he met this gaze, he suddenly felt cold all over. Chen Fangqing hesitated for a moment. He had no time to think about it carefully, so he gave up this rare place instinctively. He turned his head and glanced at Wan Qingyun, the vice president of Zhongzhou state, and said with a smile, "When it comes to suitable candidates, the first one I think of is comrade Wang Jingxin, the speaker of Linpen. This comrade has a high theoretical level, strong practical working ability, and outstanding prestige in Linpen. He has the overall situation and is good at dealing with complex situations. I think it is very suitable, even the most suitable, to let Wang Jingxin go to Tiannan." He glanced at Li Tianlan out of the corner of his eye. Li Tianlan still had a faint smile on his face, but there was a touch of sarcasm in it. Chen Fangqing subconsciously clenched his fists, took a deep breath, and kept smiling. Everyone had a thoughtful look on their faces. Indeed, Wang Jingxin, the speaker of Linpen, was really the most suitable candidate at present. Letting him go to Tiannan could be regarded as an explanation to both the giant group and Li Tianlan. At least, not to mention Dongqing Wudi, at least the possibility of Zhou Mulan's opposition was very small. Wang Jingxin had enough ability and the top background. As the core of the next generation of the Wang family of Beihai, Wang Tianzong was very optimistic about the next generation of the Wang family of Beihai. In the future, Wang Jingxin's status in the Wang family of Beihai would be like that of Zhongzhou State Councillor Wang Qinglei in the Wang family of Beihai. Such a background would not make him afraid of Li Tianlan. Moreover, his ability was not only to deal with the complex situation in Tiannan, but also to play with Li Tianlan in Tiannan. Everyone present was very confident about Wang Jingxin's means. Even if he could not take advantage of Li Tianlan, at least he would not suffer a loss. Moreover, moving Wang Jingxin out of Jiangzhou was tantamount to forcing the Wang family of Beihai to give up Linpen. At the very least, it was tantamount to greatly relieving the pressure of Governor Zhou Yuanshan of Jiangzhou. More than 20 years ago, Jiangzhou was the base camp of the Li family. Over the years, Wu Jingmin had become more and more determined to defend Jiangzhou. But he was in the Southeast Group, and Jiangzhou had been infiltrated by the Southeast Group a lot. Among them, Wang Jingxin was the representative of the Wang family of Beihai in Jiangzhou. Some time ago, Wu Jingmin entered the cabinet and became the vice prime minister, the next leader of the giant group, and Dongqing Wudi's son-in-law, Zhou Yuanshan, was transferred to Jiangzhou as the governor. It seemed that he was going to take over. But Su Xinghe, the governor of Jiangnan, was transferred to Jiangzhou as the speaker, which could also be regarded as the counterattack of the Wang family of Beihai. Now Jiangzhou seemed to be calm, but the internal situation was turbulent. Zhou Yuanshan was suppressed by Su Xinghe, and Wang Jingxin was eyeing him covetously. He was under great pressure. At this time, if Wang Jingxin, who was as famous as Zhou Yuanshan, was transferred away, Su Xinghe would definitely not be able to resist Zhou Yuanshan. Jiangzhe would be separated from the sphere of influence of the Wang family of Beihai. But Jiangzhe, which belonged to the Li family, might fall back into the hands of the Li family with Zhou Yuanshan's ascension. But it was more likely to belong to the giant group. If Li Tianlan did not fight, he would feel sorry for Wu Jingmin and some old people who were loyal to the Li family. If he fought, he would destroy the relationship with the giant group. But at present, Li Tianlan was still close to the giant group. So transferring Wang Jingxin to relieve Zhou Yuanshan's pressure was still an explanation to Li Tianlan. The twists and turns in the middle were too complicated. Only a sophisticated person like Chen Fangqing could lock on Wang Jingxin at the first time. If this move succeeded, it would be more than killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Almost all aspects were compressing Li Tianlan's future development space. This was indeed a good thing. But only for Chen Fangqing. No. Without the slightest hesitation, Vice President Wan Qingyun of Zhongzhou State directly refused Chen Fangqing's proposal, and his voice was cold and hard. Wang Jingxin. He was cultivated by the Southeast Group and the Wang family of Beihai as the next standard-bearer. A ticket to enter the parliament was very attractive to others, but for Wang Jingxin, it was destined. His end was not only to enter the parliament of Zhongzhou State, or even to become a director. From the beginning, he and Zhou Yuanshan and a few others were staring at the position of president. Now he was playing with Zhou Yuanshan and Lin An. Although he was not at ease, at least he was not at a disadvantage. To say the least, even if the Southeast Group really wanted to give up Jiangzhe, Wang Jingxin could go to Jianghuai, Jiangnan, or Wuyue, where the power of the Southeast Group was deeply rooted. Go to Tiannan to play with Li Tianlan? Win? There was no benefit, and it would be worse if he lost. Why would Wang Jingxin jump into that pit of fire? Moreover, he refused Li Tianlan's face and wanted to send people to Tiannan. Did he really think that Li Tianlan was a clay bodhisattva without anger? This person was a raging fire. Perhaps the only benefit of Wang Jingxin going to Tiannan was that he could contain Li Tianlan's development to a certain extent, but the premise was that he had to stand firm under Li Tianlan's suppression. Even if he could achieve this goal, it was not what the Wang family of Beihai needed. Chen Fangqing's proposal was simply outrageous. Chen Fangqing narrowed his eyes slightly. At that moment, he exchanged a look with Li Huaqing again. The relationship between the Prince Group and the academics was not harmonious over the years. After all, Li Huaqing took over the position of president from the Prince Group. But in many cases, there was a rare tacit understanding between the president of Zhongzhou State and the prime minister of Zhongzhou State. It was no exaggeration to say that although Li Huaqing and Chen Fangqing had different positions, they were the best president and prime minister in Zhongzhou State in the past 100 years. Chen Fangqing looked at Li Huaqing. Li Huaqing's eyes were clear and indifferent. He nodded calmly. Chen Fangqing laughed. The transfer of cadres has always been subject to the organization. I think Wang Jingxin is a very good candidate. If he goes to Tiannan, it's a good thing. Comrade Qingyun, from the standpoint of Zhongzhou State, don't you think Wang Jingxin is very suitable? The current situation in Jiangzhe is also very critical. As for Lin An, we can't do without Comrade Wang Jingxin for the time being. If he goes to Tiannan now, Lin An will be a little difficult. Ji Wenjiang smiled and also expressed his opposition. Chen Fangqing smiled indifferently. He and Li Huaqing had reached a tacit understanding. At this time, he didn't want to waste his breath at all. He said calmly, if the council can't reach a consensus, I propose a vote. Vote. 9 council members. The minority followed the majority. As long as more than half of the 9 giants supported Wang Jingxin to go to Tiannan, the appointment would be considered passed. Wan Qingyun and Ji Wenjiang's faces suddenly changed, and their eyes became a little gloomy. There was no doubt that they saw determination from Chen Fangqing's look. The Prince Group was very strong, stronger than the academics and the Giant Group. But facing the Southeast Group alone, they had no advantage. At this time, Chen Fangqing confidently wanted to vote, which could only mean one thing. At that moment, they had reached a consensus with at least one of the academics or the giant group. Who was it? There was no need to think about it at all. The academics. It could only be the academics. Because compared with the giant group that fully supported Li Tianlan, the academics sometimes had a very subtle position. They were indeed dutiful allies, but only limited to allies. From the perspective of the academics, they preferred that Li Tianlan's peak position was supported by the academics and the giant group, not by Li Tianlan himself. Therefore, the academics certainly didn't want to see Li Tianlan establish his own group, but because they were allies, they couldn't oppose it. Wang Jingxin going to Tiannan was undoubtedly a good move. As long as Wang Jingxin went there, he and Li Tianlan would be entangled. It was impossible for the Wang family of Beihai to give up Wang Jingxin, the future leader, and they were bound to give him support. In this way, the contradiction between Li Tianlan and the Wang family of Beihai would continue to escalate. At that time, the Wang family of Beihai would naturally suppress Li Tianlan in all aspects. But now, how could Li Tianlan, who had already grown up, have no power to resist? If the Wang family of Beihai wanted to suppress Li Tianlan, they had to show their real strength. A large part of their energy was tied up by Li Tianlan. At that time, it would be more convenient for Zhongzhou state to take action against the Wang family of Beihai. Weakening the Wang family of Beihai and the Southeast group represented huge interests, which were related to the advancement and retreat of countless people, their future, their life and death, and their political lives. The giant group would definitely support Li Tianlan. In this way, the giant group and Li Tianlan, the Wang family of Beihai and Wang Jingxin. In the process of the game between the two sides, the giant group would definitely pay more attention to the academics' attitude, and the academics could also take advantage of this to get a lot of benefits. If there was no accident, Li Huaqing would retire after 3 years. He very much hoped to work for one more term, but if his plan failed, before he retired, he must arrange a way out for the academics. The so-called way out, to put it bluntly, was to strengthen the strength of the academics and try to let more people of the academics take more positions. Because as he retired, the academics would inevitably encounter the joint oppression of several other groups. Even an ally like the giant group would not be polite at that time. If Li Huaqing did not arrange it well, the North group today might be the academics tomorrow. If Wang Jingxin was transferred to Tiannan, such a big opportunity, the academics would definitely gain a lot. At that time, even if he retired, the academics would have enough bargaining chips to compromise in the face of the joint forces of several other groups. Wan Qingyun and Ji Wenjiang looked at each other, and they immediately understood the position of the academics. Li Huaqing would certainly not let go of such a good opportunity. No matter how good their relationship with Li Tianlan was, the academics had to make plans for itself. Several eyes looked at Dongxing Wudi at the same time. Li Tianlan was looking at Dongxing Wudi. Ji Wenjiang and Wan Qingyun were also looking at Dongxing Wudi. If the Prince group and the academics joined hands, there would be 4 members of the Li family. In the current situation, the Southeast group could only choose to join hands with the giant group, so that the 4 directors could barely stand. Chen Fangqing, Li Huaqing, Ji Wenjiang, Wan Qingyun, and even Li Tianlan could see the problem clearly, so could Dongxing Wudi. Ji Wenjiang and Wan Qingyun thought that Dongxing Wudi had no reason to refuse. As for Li Tianlan, he also wanted to see if the giant group was really willing to support him at all costs. The giant group, the Southeast group. The Prince group, the academics. They joined hands. In many cases, when it came to the overall situation and politics, the boundary between opponents and friends had always been very blurred. There were no eternal opponents, and there were no eternal friends. Joining hands and playing games, fighting and compromising, had always been because of interests, and only because of interests. Dongxing Wudi smiled faintly and said calmly, "Everyone, Tiannan has not returned yet. Whether it is Emperor Dong's palace or Xianyuan city, they should be limited to the special warfare system, right? Your Highness Gu Xingyun, what do you think? His voice was very calm, but as soon as he spoke, Chen Fangqing and Li Huaqing's eyes had narrowed at the same time. Wang Qingyun and Ji Wenzhang breathed a sigh of relief. Obviously, Dongqing Wudi had accepted the signal to join hands to stop Wang Jingxin's mobilization. Zhou Mulan was silent for a while, nodded, and said clearly, I agree with the minister. In this matter, it is obvious that Kunlun City has the most say. Gu Xingyun's eyes had become extremely distorted. He sat here on an equal footing with the directors, but he had no right to vote. These people discussed for a long time and completely regarded him as transparent. Now they remembered that this was a matter of the Special Warfare Group. Gu Xingyun only felt extremely aggrieved, and even his internal injury got worse. A few years ago, after the retirement of Qi Beizong, the executive minister of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State and the leader of the Special Warfare Group, the Special Warfare Group received enough compensation in other fields, but it lost the decision-making power at the highest level. This was the biggest weakness of the Special Warfare Group today. Gu Xingyun alone could not support this situation for the time being. But now that Dongqing Wudi had sent the opportunity to him, he could not give it up. How could he not know that this opportunity was actually a trap? But the problem was that he could not retreat. Because he was the god of war of Zhongzhou State, the leader of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State, and Kunlun City was the special warfare center of Zhongzhou State. As for the problem of Tiannan, Kunlun City had the most say before everything came to the table. It was impossible for him to agree with Li Tianlan's people as the mayor of Shenyuan City. If possible, he would not agree with the people of other groups as the mayor. In the final analysis, this was an internal matter of the special warfare area. Even for the sake of the face of Kunlun City, Gu Xingyun had to fight for the position of mayor. As for whether it was a trap or an opportunity, it depended on the ability of the new mayor. Gu Xingyun took a deep breath. He was clearly aware of the obvious smell of blood in his throat as he breathed. He clenched his fists tightly and said calmly, Comrade Wang Jingxin is indeed a very good candidate, but I also have a candidate here for you to consider. He said lightly, Qi Mulan, the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Security, what do you think? Qi Mulan once served as the mayor of Beijiang, the speaker, the deputy governor, and so on. 2 years ago, he was transferred to the Ministry of Security. He has the experience of governing a local government, working in the Ministry of Security, and dealing with people in the dark world. I think Qi Mulan is more suitable to be the mayor of Shenyuan City than Wang Jingxin. I agree. Without hesitation, Dongqing Wudi directly expressed his position. Agree. 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 Ji Wenzhang, Wang Qingyun, and Zhou Mulan spoke almost at the same time. Gu Xingyun had to fight for the position of mayor of Shenyuan City. If Gu Xingyun did not fight for the grievances between the Gu family and the Li family, it would cause considerable opinions in the outside world. He had to fight for it, and there was no way back. But the Southeast group did not need to fight for this. They also did not want to see Li Tianlan rise, but they did not want to lose anything. I agree. Li Tianlan was smiling, but when Chen Fangqing saw his smile, he felt a chill in his heart. If Zhou Yuanshan and Wang Jingxin were the next generation of the giant group, then Qi Mulan could be said to be the next leader of the Special Warfare Group. Qi Mulan was the adopted son of Qi Beizong. Qi Beizong had no reputation after losing his son in the early years. After adopting Qi Mulan, he put all his hopes on him. Under the care of Qi Beizong, Qi Mulan's Qi family developed rapidly, and Qi Mulan stood out early. At the age of 32, he was a deputy governor with real power. This kind of light was extremely dazzling in the whole Zhongzhou state. Gu Xingyun was not confused by anger. He chose a person who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Wang Jingxin and Zhou Yuanshan. I think Comrade Wang Jingxin is more suitable for the work in Shenyuan City. Guo Wentian said slowly, of course, Comrade Qi Mulan is also very excellent, but he has a heavy burden in the Ministry of Security. The Ministry of Security is sensitive, so I don't recommend transferring him. The burden in Lin and is also heavy. Relatively speaking, Qi Mulan is relatively easy. Wang Qingyun said tit for tat. The government of Lin and has developed well in recent years, and the system is still very mature. If Wang Jingxin goes to Shenyuan City, the impact will not be too big. On the contrary, many things in the Ministry of Security are very sensitive. If we transfer him in a hurry, I'm afraid it's not appropriate. I think it's better for Wang Jingxin. Hua Jingyang, the Prime Minister of Zhongzhou State for the first time, said with a smile. As the leader of the academics, second only to Li Huaqing, Hua Jingyang showed the attitude of the academics as soon as he spoke. Li Tianlan took a meaningful look at Li Huaqing. Li Huaqing's smile was very gentle. Let's vote. Chen Fangqing chuckled and said, everyone's will is worthy of respect. President, I suggest holding a plenary meeting of the parliament immediately to vote on this matter. He looked at Li Tianlan and said with a smile, Marshal Li is busy, and there is a very important thing in Tiannan now. This matter can't be delayed. Since we have decided to establish Shenyuan City, we should cut the Gordian knot and choose the mayor as soon as possible, so that we can discuss the next plan. Dongxing Wudi's expression froze for a moment. The expressions of Ji Wenjiang and Wang Qingyun also changed. Holding a plenary meeting of the parliament. They really didn't expect Chen Fangqing to do this. Now it was the council meeting of the Zhongzhou State Parliament, which could be said to be the most authoritative and highest-level meeting in Zhongzhou State. The plenary meeting of the parliament was to summon more than 20 councillors to vote together, which suddenly expanded the scope several times. But it was really hard to refuse this matter. Under normal circumstances, the vote of a senior official at the level of deputy governor did not need to be discussed at the plenary meeting of the parliament. However, Chen Fangqing's proposal to hold a plenary meeting to vote on such a sensitive matter as the first mayor at the level of deputy governor in Tiannan and the first mayor of Shenyuan City was very appropriate. But the point was, Wang Qingyun and Ji Wenjiang didn't dare to gamble. They really didn't dare to gamble. The sixth group of Zhongzhou State. Now, although Gu Xingyun of the Special Warfare Group proposed a candidate, although his rank was at the level of a councillor, he was not a real councillor, so he didn't have the right to vote. And the North Group was weak. Today's meeting was so lively that they were really watching the fun. Zhou Yunhai, the dignified Minister of Politics and Law of Zhongzhou State, as a councillor, didn't express his opinion on this matter from beginning to end. In the voting, the North Group was bound to abstain. In this way, it was a contest between the Southeast Group and the Giant Group against the Academics and the Prince Group. The Four Group was also the four strongest groups in Zhongzhou State today. Looking at the strength on paper, such a comparison of strength was actually equal, and even the number of councillors and councillors was infinitely equal. Under normal circumstances, if the result of the voting was infinitely close, as the president, Li Huaqing was unlikely to exercise the highest decision-making power. Because in any case, Li Tianlan and the Giant Group were allies of the academics. It was not the time to fall out with them, and there was even no possibility of falling out in the future. The reason why Chen Fangqing and Li Huaqing supported the voting showed that they believed that their side would still win with a relatively large advantage when there was little or no difference in strength between the two sides. The reason? It was very simple. Because this matter was about the appointment of Wang Jingxin. And inside the Southeast Group, there was Wang Qinglei. The cracks inside the Wang family of Beihai were now more and more obvious. At the most critical moment, summer solstice sent Wang Xiaoyao to Eastern Europe. More and more people were aware of the abnormality inside the Wang family of Beihai. And Wang Qinglei had made frequent moves inside the group recently, and his prestige had soared. Many people had begun to move. If there was really a vote, as the future leader Wang Tianzong was most optimistic about, Wang Jingxin could not get Wang Qinglei's support. After all, Wang Jingxin's advance and retreat could even directly affect Wang Qinglei's position. Although there was a big age gap between the two, it was not big enough for 2 presidential terms. If the Southeast Group wanted to push Wang Jingxin to the highest altar in Zhongzhou State 20 years later, then the first decade was also the most glorious time for Wang Qinglei. He had to make compromises and sacrifices. His career might not stop there, but he certainly would not be able to reach the position of president. Now the six group were competing with each other, and it was unlikely that two consecutive presidents would come from the same group. Similarly, if Wang Qinglei sat in the position he dreamed of 10 years later, then Wang Jingxin was unlikely to reach the top. Within the Southeast group, Wang Qinglei and Wang Jingxin had become the most direct competitors, not to mention the obvious cracks within the group. Vote? The power that belonged to Wang Qinglei would definitely support the Prince Group and the academics to transfer Wang Qinglei to Tiannan. At least for now, Wang Qinglei was extremely confident. He did not oppose Zhongzhou State weakening the Wang family of Beihai because he was confident. He was confident that after he reached the top, he could take the Wang family of Beihai to a new peak in 10 years or even longer. The Wang family of Beihai was dominated by him and Wang Xiaoyao. I agree to hold a plenary meeting of the council. Li Huaqing said calmly, in this case, let's adjourn for the time being and invite all members of parliament to Zhongzhou State. With today's means of communication, all members of parliament could participate in this meeting through online video. However, it could be said that this voting meeting was related to the future pattern of Zhongzhou State. Every director had to confirm the attitude of the councillors face to face. To put it bluntly, the face-to-face voting was the easiest to control and the most powerful vote. Li Tianlan, who had been silent, slowly turned around and walked out of the conference room. Other directors also stood up and moved their bodies. It was dusk outside the window. The meeting that started in the early morning had lasted for a whole day. Li Tianlan looked at the dusk outside the window that was about to fade, lost in thought. Tianlan. Dongxing Wudi walked over slowly and handed Li Tianlan a cigarette. Li Tianlan took out a lighter and lit it for him. Then he lit his own cigarette and took a deep breath. He may not be able to withstand it. Dongxing Wudi said slowly. It's okay. Li Tianlan shook his head with a smile. The situation may not be as bad as we think. Dongxing Wudi said with some doubts. Because it's too early. Li Tianlan said softly, I don't think Wang Qinglei is ready to break up with Wang Tianzong, even if this is a good opportunity. Dongxing Wudi thought for a moment, nodded, and then shook his head. What if Wang Jingxin really becomes the mayor of Xianyuan City? He asked slowly. He can't go up. Li Tianlan shook his head. Qi Mulan can't go up either. You want to? Dongxing Wudi raised his eyebrows. There are still many people who don't know me or Tiannan very well. Li Tianlan said lightly, I don't mind putting on a show with them, but when the show is over, they must also realize that I have the final say in Tiannan. Xianyuan City can have a mayor, but this mayor must be surnamed Ning. Dongxing Wudi was silent for a long time and said softly, You are trying to establish power. Li Tianlan smiled and did not answer. Chapter 7:16. At 9:00 in the evening, the meeting, which had been adjourned for nearly 4 hours, resumed after eating the meal sent by the staff. The original council meeting became a meeting attended by all the councillors. All the councillors, including several governors of special provinces, rushed to Yuzhou as soon as they received the notice. One of them even gave up the councillors' meeting that was held in his own province. In addition, there were 2 special people who were also invited to participate in this meeting. The candidates for the first mayor of Tiannan. Wang Jingxin. Qi Mulan. Ning Ziyuan snorted unabashedly when he saw the 2 candidates. He almost couldn't hold back his anger. In Zhongzhou State's mind, these 2 were the best candidates for the first mayor of Tiannan. But when Li Tianlan proposed the establishment of Xianyuan City, he recommended Ning Qiancheng. In any case, Ning Qiancheng should be one of the candidates, and he was nominated by Li Tianlan himself. Even if Zhongzhou State didn't agree, it should call him in. This was the minimum respect and basic procedure. However, both Chen Fangqing and Li Huaqing were determined not to give face to Li Tianlan. Ning Qiancheng's issue was not mentioned at all. As the voting was about to take place, one of them, Qi Mulan or Wang Jingxin, would become the first mayor of Shenyuan City. In the solemn conference room, the councillors took their seats one by one. Li Tianlan sat in the last seat. When Zhongzhou State didn't approve his resignation, he was still the marshal of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State and a councillor. But because of his age, his position was very low. This time, Gu Xingyun didn't sit next to Li Tianlan. Next to Li Tianlan was Wu Jingmin, the vice prime minister of Zhongzhou State, who had entered the cabinet but had not been added as a councillor. There was no doubt that compared with the academics and even the giant group, Wu Jingmin and Li Tianlan had a closer relationship. Li Tianlan's own group was still an illusion, but if this illusory group was really put forward now, Wu Jingmin would be the well-deserved leader of the Li family's group. But it was a little embarrassing that only Wu Jingmin could really play a role in the overall situation. A one-man group inevitably sounded a little shabby. Sitting next to Li Tianlan, Wu Jingmin glanced at Li Tianlan calmly and hesitated. Li Tianlan looked calm and shook his head with a smile. In this meeting, he and Wu Jingmin had the right to speak as members of parliament, but they did not have the right to vote. Although Wu Jingmin would officially enter the parliament of Zhongzhou State in a few months, he did not have the power to make decisions at the moment. This was a rule that could not be broken. So they were sitting here today just to watch the fun, even though Li Tianlan was the most important person involved. Dongqing Wudi inevitably had to be more serious. When the meeting was adjourned, he also exchanged in-depth opinions with Wan Qingyun and Ji Wenzhang. Although both sides knew that the cooperation between them was likely to be limited to this meeting and would immediately go their separate ways after the meeting, or even become mortal enemies, it was necessary to strengthen the temporary alliance between the two sides at this critical moment. Dongqing Wudi knew Li Tianlan's plan very well. The first mayor of Shenyuan City, Li Tianlan's first nomination in Zhongzhou State, must be Ning Qianqing, no one else. This was related to the future of Tiannan and the Li family group, as well as Li Tianlan's personal prestige. Li Tianlan would not retreat. Therefore, whether Wang Jingxin or Qi Mulan was elected today, Li Tianlan must take action in the most straightforward and forceful way. Li Tianlan had been mentally prepared to completely fall out with Kunlun City or the Wang family of Beihai. He was fearless, and in the case of no retreat, he could be said to be really unscrupulous. But Dongqing Wudi was different. He could not give up on Li Tianlan, which meant that if Qi Mulan was elected, they would become mortal enemies with Qi Beizong and the entire special warfare group. If Wang Jingxin was elected, they would fight to the death with the Wang family of Beihai. Compared with the Wang family of Beihai and the Southeast group, it was undoubtedly Dongqing Wudi who offended a newly risen special warfare group with a poor foundation. This was the situation that Dongqing Wudi wanted to see most. Although it meant that after Qi Mulan was elected, Dongqing Wudi would bear more pressure in the army headquarters in the future. Dongqing Wudi looked at Li Tianlan with a gentle look in his eyes. Qi Beizong was the former standing minister of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State. He had been in the army headquarters for many years. Even though he retired, his influence was still deep-rooted. If they offended Qi Beizong at this time, the situation of the army headquarters would be more complicated. But compared with offending the Wang family of Beihai, this was the best result. Moreover, Li Tianlan was too young after all. Dongqing Wudi was willing to help Li Tianlan bear more pressure. For public or private reasons, he should do so. His eyes swept across the audience, paused slightly on the members of the giant group, and then fell on Zhou Mulan. Everyone's expression was calm and determined. Dongqing Wudi took a deep breath and waited for the meeting to continue. The meeting lasted for the 13th hour. At 9:15 p.m. The news that Li Tianlan was about to establish Shenyuan City had already spread throughout Zhongzhou State and even throughout the dark world because of the midway adjournment. While the whole world was paying attention to the situation in Tiannan, the whole world was also paying attention to the result of this meeting in Zhongzhou State. Facing Li Tianlan's gradually sharpening eyes, Li Huaqing's loud and steady voice spread throughout the audience. It was simple, direct, and without any detour. Everyone, you should be very clear about the reason for holding this plenary meeting urgently. Marshal Li Tianlan has officially defeated the Burning Legion and recaptured Tunan City. Zhongzhou State has decided to establish Xianyuan City with Tunan City as the foundation in Tiannan. If there is no accident, Xianyuan City will be the capital of the whole Tiannan province in the future. His eyes looked around the audience, and there was a very obvious pressure in his gentleness. The reason for holding this meeting is to discuss the personnel issues in Xianyuan City. At present, we have two candidates, Speaker Wang Jingxin of Lin and Qi Mulan, the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Security. As for these two comrades, I personally prefer Comrade Wang Jingxin. If you have any ideas, please say them. Everyone narrowed their eyes at the same time. Li Huaqing's attitude was extremely firm. This was obviously Chen Fangqing's proposal, but as soon as he came up, Li Huaqing first expressed his preference. He was the president of Zhongzhou State, and his attitude could undoubtedly put great pressure on others. Moreover, his attitude fully showed that in this meeting, on this personnel issue, the Prince Group and the academics had joined hands. I think Comrade Qi Mulan is more suitable. Comrade Qi Mulan's performance in the Ministry of Security is obvious to all. The nature of his work is also more suitable for the sensitive and complicated situation in Tiannan. Yi Dongsheng, the Deputy Minister of the Army Headquarters, the Chief of Staff, known as the God of Army, was the first to express his opinion without any hesitation. As one of the leaders of the Southeast Group, he could not care less about Li Huaqing on this matter. Li Tianlan could be unscrupulous because he had nothing now. After all, Emperor Dong's palace had just taken shape. But the Wang family of Beihai could not. At this stage, the Wang family of Beihai did not want to have any conflict with Li Tianlan for the time being. Yes, Comrade Qi Mulan is more suitable. As for Comrade Wang Jingxin, he is doing well in Lin. Recently, the plan of Lin and World Expo application has been sent to the cabinet, and the procedure has been started. I think it's more suitable to replace him at this time, Tong Xiaoshan, the Vice Minister of the Cabinet, said calmly. As the only power of the Southeast Group in the cabinet, he must show his attitude. I've learned about Lin An's application for the World Expo. There is no problem in the procedure. It's just a formality, and the impact is not great. Comrade Wang Jingxin is a steady person. I think it's more suitable for him to go to Tiannan. A loud voice sounded after Tong Xiaoshan. It was He Nanfang, the Speaker of Nanyue in Zhongzhou State, one of the leaders of the Prince Group. I support Comrade Qi Mulan. The Speaker of Beihai Province's voice was flat. There was no reason, but his attitude was extremely clear. Comrade Qi Mulan is indeed more suitable. Bai Zhanfang, the Speaker of Yuzhou, said lightly. You can't say that. With Comrade Wang Jingxin's ability, I think he is very suitable to serve as the mayor of Xianyuan City. The mayor of Xianyuan City. As for experience, Comrade Wang Jingxin is still young and can be trained. Besides, His Highness Li Tianlan is looking after Tiannan. Even if Comrade Wang Jingxin makes a mistake, there will be no problem. Zhong Yongming, the Speaker of Huading, said with a smile. He was a loyal member of the Prince Group and had a deep hatred for Li Tianlan. Back in Huading, his son Zhong Yuwei died in Li Tianlan's hands. Zhong Yongming had never shown too much hostility, but the hatred of his son's death was really irreconcilable. Zhong Yongming didn't move because he didn't find a chance. As long as there was a chance, he didn't mind making trouble for Li Tianlan. The bigger the trouble, the happier he would be. I agree with Speaker Zhong. In the hearty laughter, another member of the Prince Group stood up. The meeting was becoming more and more lively. The North Group still remained silent. People from the Prince Group, the academics, the Giant Group, and the Southeast Group kept speaking, and their words became more and more intense. Li Tianlan, the center of everyone's attention, did not speak. In the other center, Wang Qinglei also did not speak. Chen Fangqing glanced at Wang Qinglei, narrowed his eyes, and suddenly said with a smile, since everyone's opinions are not unanimous, then I suggest a vote. He didn't want to talk about voting anonymously. What he wanted was to see everyone's attitude clearly, especially Wang Qinglei's. He glanced at Li Huaqing. Li Huaqing nodded and said calmly, "Those who agree with Wang Jingxin's transfer to Tiannan, please raise your hand." When he said this, he was the first to raise his hand. Prime Minister Chen Fangqing of Zhongzhou State, Second Prime Minister Hua Jingyang, and Speaker Guo Wendian raised their hands one after another. The members of the two groups also raised their hands. Chen Fangqing stared at Wang Qinglei, his eyes extremely sharp. Wang Qinglei's palm moved slightly, but in the end, he did not raise it. He was really not ready to let the southeast group split now. Chen Fangqing's eyes focused for a moment, then he smiled and did not speak. Wang Qinglei's attitude was very important, but it was not crucial. With such a good opportunity, even if Wang Qinglei did not raise his hand, he would certainly not support Qi Mulan's transfer to Tiannan. The biggest concession he made was nothing more than not supporting Wang Jingxin. In this case, they still had an advantage in votes. This was a very crucial vote. Even if they abstained, it could still play a role. The most important thing was that the president was on their side. When there was no advantage or the advantage was weak, the president could make the decision. Without Wang Qinglei, the Southeast Group and the Giant Group could not surpass them in votes. Li Huaqing smiled and said lightly, "Those who agree with Qi Mulan's transfer to Tiannan, please raise your hand." Dongxing Wudi was the first to raise his hand. He was very determined. Wan Qingyun and Ji Wenzhang raised their hands at the same time. The members raised their hands one by one. 1, 2. Huh. Who was that? Everyone's pupils constricted. In the corner of the conference room, Xia Qiuling, a member of Zhongzhou State and the Joint Minister of Zhongzhou State, was also raising her hand. Her expression was very calm. Li Huaqing's expression froze for a moment. Xia Qiuling. This was not a member of the Giant Group, nor of the Southeast Group, but the North Group. Chen Fangqing suddenly looked back and stared at Zhou Yunhai, the director of Zhongzhou State, the supreme leader of the North Group. In everyone's sight, Zhou Yunhai's palm was raised little by little. In silence, he finally raised his arm. The North Group. How was it possible? Li Huaqing narrowed his eyes. There was an uproar in the conference room. Chen Fangqing's face suddenly became extremely gloomy. Was Wang Qinglei's vote crucial? Maybe it was. Chapter 717. Zhou Yunhai's hand was raised quietly. It was calm, stable, and indifferent. It was a hand full of power. Everyone was looking at this hand, and their minds were blank. Zhou Yunhai had been low-key for too long. For a long time, even some extremely powerful counselors like Yi Dongsheng had more right to speak than Zhou Yunhai, a counselor. But after knowing this and seeing him raise his hand, people realized that this was one of the most powerful hands in the entire Zhongzhou state. Not only because the owner of this hand controlled the political and legal organs of the entire Zhongzhou state, but also because the owner of this hand controlled the lifeline of the entire North Group. The North Group was the weakest among the six. They hadn't even had a president for decades, but they were also the most cohesive within the six. Zhou Yunhai's raising of his hand did not represent himself, not even the key vote at the moment. It represented the attitude of the whole group. Specifically speaking, now. 1 counselor, 2 counselors. 3 votes. 3 votes were enough to break the fragile balance of the 4 groups. And it was complete destruction. Zhou Yunhai. How could it be possible? Why was it Zhou Yunhai? Chen Fangqing was a little confused and angry. He and Li Huaqing had their own plans, but his biggest purpose was to weaken the Wang family of Beihai. For him, Li Tianlan and Xianyuan City were not even the most important things in this meeting and this vote. Tiannan was indeed the key, but even if he really believed Li Tianlan's promise, it was the key that could be controlled after 5 years. And the Wang family of Beihai. 5 years? Chen Fangqing couldn't afford to waste this time. With Wang Tianzong missing, the Wang family of Beihai lost its spiritual leader, the 7 sword-holding families were swept away, and the internal cracks in Mount Dibbing were getting bigger and bigger. With internal and external troubles, this was the best time to target the Wang family of Beihai. No one knew how long it would last, but once Wang Tianzong reappeared, the good situation would be completely destroyed. What Chen Fangqing wanted most was to seize this opportunity to weaken the Wang family of Beihai, not only for the prince group, but also for Zhongzhou state. No one denied that the Wang family of Beihai had brought unimaginable benefits to Zhongzhou state for hundreds of years. But no one could deny that a Wang family of Beihai that could be completely controlled by Zhongzhou state could bring greater benefits to Zhongzhou state. Transferring Wang Jingxin to Tiannan was definitely a wonderful move that could throw the Wang family of Beihai into chaos. No matter how powerful the Southeast group was, its resources were limited. Wang Jingxin had reached this step and was stuck at the threshold of the governor level. It would take unimaginable resources to train a future leader to this level. Countless political achievements, overt and covert propaganda, and so on, could not be measured by money. It was impossible for the Wang family of Beihai to give up on Wang Jingxin. If they really gave up on Wang Jingxin, it would be difficult for the Wang family of Beihai to cultivate a qualified successor in a short time. The candidate they pushed out in a hurry could not stand up to the top young generation like Zhou Yuanshan. As long as the Wang family of Beihai did not give up on Wang Jingxin, they had to confront Li Tianlan in Tiannan. At that time, Chen Fangqing would naturally give Li Tianlan more support and let the Wang family of Beihai invest more and more energy in Tiannan. When the Wang family of Beihai's investment in Tiannan reached the upper limit, it was bound to compromise with Zhongzhou state. Chen Fangqing did not expect the Wang family of Beihai to be obedient to Zhongzhou state all at once. But slowly, step by step, he could change the transcendent status of the Wang family of Beihai in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. Such a situation was not completely hopeless for the Wang family of Beihai. As long as they solved Wang Qinglei internally and helped Wang Jingxin block Li Tianlan in Tiannan, once Tiannan returned, Wang Jingxin's reputation would also reach its peak. At that time, it was even equivalent to directly locking in the position of president in 20 years. The Wang family of Beihai could also use Wang Jingxin to relaunch Beihai shipping. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. The province became transcendent. This was undoubtedly a very difficult path, but it was not completely hopeless. This was also Chen Fangqing's most brilliant enemy. He would never force his opponents to a dead end. While protecting himself, he could also attack his enemies, and at the same time, he could prevent his enemies from doing something desperate. In the end, as the situation became more and more difficult, they would be silently scattered. Chen Fangqing's plan could be said to be infinitely close to success. But Zhou Yunhai. He directly took the palms of the other 2 members of the Wang family of Beihai with one hand. The number of members and directors who supported Qi Mulan to go to Tiannan had exceeded the number of members and directors who supported Wang Jingxin. Especially the 9 directors. Now there were 5 who opposed Wang Jingxin. Even Li Huaqing could not force this appointment, otherwise the consequences would be too serious. Now Li Huaqing, who was bent on protecting the interests of the academics, would certainly not do so. And all this was because of Zhou Yunhai. He betrayed the interests of Zhongzhou state. Chen Fangqing took a deep breath, and the anger in his eyes grew stronger. He did not know why Zhou Yunhai supported Qi Mulan. There were too many possibilities. It might be because of the Wang family of Beihai, the giant group, or the special warfare group. No matter which side he favored, it was possible for him to raise his hand now. The key was to see which of the 3 could give him more benefits. Chen Fangqing gritted his teeth. He wanted to speak several times, but he finally said nothing. The atmosphere suddenly became silent. Li Huaqing waited for a few seconds, nodded slowly, and said calmly, "In this case, Comrade Qi Mulan, you hand over the work of the Ministry of Security these days." "Okay." Qi Mulan nodded calmly, but there was a flash of obvious excitement in his eyes. Yes, excitement. He might not know the reason why he and Wang Jingxin were pushed out, or he might not know, or he might know Gu Xingyun's helplessness, or he might not know, but it didn't matter. At least for him, it was a good thing. Compared with the leaders of the next generation like Wang Jingxin and Zhou Yuanshan, the identity of the successor of the Special Warfare Group was slightly weaker. Besides, he was only Qi Beizong's adopted son, not his biological son. In this way, the support he could get was slightly worse than that of the first two. If there was no accident, 20 years later, he might try his best to radicalize the council of the Zhongzhou State Parliament, but his ranking would certainly not be too ideal. It was certain that he would be at the bottom. Now, going to Tiannan was undoubtedly an opportunity for him. In a sensitive place like Tiannan, his experience in the Ministry of Security and local work could be perfectly matched. In other words, as long as he could stand firm in Tiannan, the identity of the future leader of the Special Warfare Group would no longer be disputed. If he did well enough, he could even be qualified to compete with Wang Jingxin and others. As for the conflict with Li Tianlan, he didn't dare to look down on Li Tianlan, but no matter what the conflict was, it was the conflict between the Special Warfare Group and Li Tianlan. With the support of Gu Xingyun, he felt that he should be able to cope with it. Qi Mulan subconsciously glanced at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's eyes swept over calmly, and there was a hint of an ambiguous smile at the corner of his mouth. Qi Mulan lowered his head slightly and stopped talking. Li Huaqing encouraged Qi Mulan a few words and also chatted with Wang Jingxin. Before the end of the meeting, the two senior officials at the level of deputy governor, who should not have appeared in this meeting, had been taken out of the conference room by the secretary. Li Tianlan sat in his seat and yawned in boredom. There was a subtle change in the silent conference room. The Prince Group and the academics. The tacit understanding between the Giant Group and the Southeast Group seemed to have completely disappeared. All the cooperation was completely stopped after the formal vote. Li Huaqing looked at Li Tianlan with a smile and whispered, "Tianlan, this comrade Qi Mulan, this chapter is not over. Please turn the page. I believe that he will be a good helper for you after he arrives in Tiannan. Zhongzhou State will increase its support for Shenyuan City in the future. If you need anything, you can communicate with me and His Highness Gu Xingyun at any time. Of course, you can also communicate with Minister Dongsheng." "I understand." Li Tianlan nodded. Gu Xingyun, who was watching all this coldly, moved the corner of his mouth, revealing a very grim smile. He was very satisfied with the result. Unlike the Wang family of Beihai, the Wang family of Beihai didn't want to fight with Li Tianlan to the end because of the threat brought to them by Zhongzhou State and Li Tianlan's current terrifying strength. But Kunlun City was different. Kunlun City had no way to retreat. No matter how strong Li Tianlan was, as long as he was in Zhongzhou State, Kunlun City must stand in front of him. Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace rose faster and faster. Now Kunlun City's high-end combat power suffered heavy losses. Gu Xingyun and Gu Qianchuan, two invincible realm experts, were seriously injured. Li Tianlan had proved again and again that his strength was enough to be on the former divine list. Under such circumstances, every time Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace took a step forward, Kunlun City was forced to take a step back. He knew Chen Fangqing. So he knew very well that he couldn't stop the establishment of Shenyuan City. If he wanted to restrain Li Tianlan, he could only tamper with the position of mayor of Shenyuan City. Qi Mulan's election was a little unexpected, but it was the most powerful exception for Kunlun City. As soon as the voting result came out, Gu Xingyun made up his mind to support Qi Mulan's development in Shenyuan City at all costs and suppress Li Tianlan. Gu Xingyun didn't want to wait any longer. He had decided to use Qi Mulan to restrain Emperor Dong's palace first. As long as he recovered from his injury, he would take action immediately. Even if it would set off another case of treason, he would completely eliminate the Li family and Li Tianlan. In a short silence, Li Huaqing raised his hand and looked at his watch. At 11:00 in the evening. It was the 15th hour of the meeting. Li Huaqing cheered up, took a sip of tea, and said calmly, "So, let's continue the meeting." When he said this, his eyes had fallen on Ning Ziyuan, and became extremely stern. Time passed slowly. From early morning to late night. The lights in the conference room of the Hidden Dragon Sea Conference were always on. Under the close attention of the world, the Burning Legion invaded Tunnan's city in the 24th hour. The Parliament of Zhongzhou State finally ended the long meeting late at night. Zhongzhou State officially decided to support Emperor Dong's palace to establish Xianyuan City. Qi Mulan, the deputy minister of the Ministry of Security, was secretly transferred to Tiannan as the first mayor of Xianyuan City and had the power to nominate other leaders. The personnel appointments were formed into documents as soon as the meeting ended and sent to the Ministry of Personnel for filing. The parliament severely criticized Ning Ziyuan, the commander of Tiannan Freedom Corps, for his inaction and gave Ning Ziyuan severe punishment. Ning Ziyuan's military rank was demoted from general to lieutenant general. The parliament also gave Ning Ziyuan a serious punishment and ordered him to make a written review in a short period of time. At the same time, the parliament approved Li Tianlan's request to resign as the Marshal of Zhongzhou State and the commander of the Snowdance Corps. Countless details were finalized one by one in the last few hours of the meeting. When Li Tianlan walked out of the conference room, the Hidden Dragon Sea was already silent late at night. Li Tianlan walked out of the door of the conference room and paused. Gu Xingyun walked past him with no expression on his face. Following the direction he was walking in, Li Tianlan turned his head slightly and narrowed his eyes. In his sight, Qi Mulan, the newly elected mayor of Xianyuan City, was waiting to greet Gu Xingyun. He was very respectful. Li Tianlan smiled, which was as bright as the sun. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 7:18. Gu Xingyun didn't hesitate or avoid it. Out of the conference room, he waved at Qi Mulan as soon as he saw him. Li Tianlan's eyes fell on his back, cold and sharp like a blade. Gu Xingyun was expressionless. He quietly watched Qi Mulan coming over and said lightly, "Prepare for tonight. Before going to Tiannan, go to Kunlun City first. The situation in Tiannan is complicated. You have to bring 2 trustworthy people." His voice was not loud, but it was sure that everyone could hear it. This was to choose bodyguards for Qi Mulan to protect him in Tiannan. Kunlun City had a poor foundation. When Gu Xingyun and Gu Qianchuan were seriously injured, it was impossible to find an expert who could guard against Li Tianlan. But it was not difficult to find 2 experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. At this time, he declared this in front of all the directors and members of Zhongzhou State. No matter how arrogant Li Tianlan was, Gu Xingyun did not believe that he would directly attack the experts of Kunlun City and Qi Mulan in Tiannan. Li Tianlan did not dare to do it. Ramelin would not attack the people of Kunlun City either. Daybreak's life and death were uncertain. In today's Tiannan, 2 experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm were enough to ensure Qi Mulan's safety. "Thank you, Your Highness." Qi Mulan bowed slightly and became more respectful. Gu Xingyun nodded. He wanted to let Qi Mulan go back to prepare, but he noticed the eyes behind him. His heart suddenly moved. "Just in case," he said slowly, "let's go together. I have something to tell you." "Why are you so nervous?" Li Tianlan came over with a smile. "Mayor Qi has just accepted the appointment, and the god of war of Zhongzhou State has become a personal bodyguard. It's a big deal. I'm just guarding against some desperate people." Gu Xingyun took a deep breath and said lightly, "Obviously, this appointment is not in line with someone's wishes, right?" "Your Highness." He was talking about someone. Not some people. It was self-evident who he was referring to. "If you're talking about me, then you're wrong. On the contrary, I think Mayor Qi's appointment is not in line with my wishes. I'm very satisfied with the result of this meeting." Li Tianlan glanced at Qi Mulan and suddenly said, "Am I right, Mayor Qi?" "Your Highness is right," Qi Mulan said with a fake smile and gloomy eyes. As a senior official at the level of deputy governor, he, who came from the Ministry of State Security, was completely different from most of the senior officials in the system. People who had been exposed to too many dark sides would inevitably be assimilated. At this time, his smiling face and eyes had completely expressed the profound hostility. This was undoubtedly what Gu Xingyun wanted to see most, and Qi Mulan was also very clear about this. With his current identity, he didn't care about offending Li Tianlan at all, but he absolutely couldn't lose Gu Xingyun's support. At this moment, facing Li Tianlan, he must show his attitude. I hope Your Highness and Emperor Dong's palace can cooperate with me in the future. Qi Mulan smiled and reached out his hand to Li Tianlan. On behalf of Tiannan, I thank Your Highness. As long as Emperor Dong's palace does well enough, Zhongzhou State and I will not treat Your Highness badly. His voice was steady and calm, clear and loud. All the people who passed by them turned their heads subconsciously to look at Li Tianlan. Everyone wanted to know what Li Tianlan's reaction would be. Li Tianlan's purpose of building Xianyuan City was very simple. He wanted to find a real long-term headquarters for Emperor Dong's palace in Tiannan. Ning Qianqing was the spokesperson he pushed to the surface and also the future core of Li Group. Now this appointment was not approved, and the spokesperson and the future core were somewhat illusory. But in any case, whoever became the mayor of Xianyuan City would, to some extent, serve Li Tianlan. But Qi Mulan obviously didn't have this consciousness. His appointment had just been approved, and before the organizational documents had been sent to the Ministry of Personnel, he had already put on the airs of the mayor outside the conference room. He actually said that he wanted Li Tianlan to cooperate with him. It was cooperation. And this tone was almost like an order. Everyone admired Qi Mulan's courage. Facing a lunatic who dared to attack Gu Xingyun, the god of war of Zhongzhou State, in the meeting of the parliament, he dared to ask him to cooperate with him. This statement was really powerful, and Gu Xingyun must be very satisfied. But what would Li Tianlan do? Li Tianlan did nothing. He glanced at the palm stretched out in front of him, and his eyes narrowed slightly. After a long silence, he nodded and said flatly, "It's a little interesting. It will be more interesting in the future." Qi Mulan calmly withdrew his palm and said with a smile, "Your Highness, see you in Tiannan." He took a step back slightly. Gu Xingyun glanced at Li Tianlan and reached out to shake hands with him. Then he turned around and left with Qi Mulan. Li Tianlan stood where he was, looking at the backs of the two. After a long time, he repeated again, "It's a little interesting. He's deliberately provoking you." A voice suddenly rang in Li Tianlan's ears. Li Tianlan turned his head slightly. Li Huaqing, who was the last to walk out of the conference room, stood beside him. Looking at the backs of Gu Xingyun and Qi Mulan, he frowned slightly. If this is their purpose, then they really succeeded. Li Tianlan said flatly, "I have a bad temper, and now I'm even worse. Walk with me." Li Huaqing was silent for a while and patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder. At this time, it was already over 3:00 in the night. Li Huaqing, who had a day's meeting, was a little tired, but he didn't feel sleepy. Moreover, his cooperation with Qin Fangqing tonight didn't achieve the goal. Now that the meeting was over, he also needed to communicate with Li Tianlan. Qi Mulan is now the mayor of Xianyuan City. You saw the process of the meeting. In fact, in this kind of meeting about sensitive personnel, the process is not important. What matters is the result. The result is obvious. Qi Mulan will go to Xianyuan City. I opposed it, so did the Prime Minister. But since the result is like this is the will of the whole Zhongzhou State. Tianlan, do you understand? I'm talking about the will of the whole Zhongzhou State. Walking on the quiet path of the hidden Dragon Sea, Li Huaqing spoke with sincerity. Li Tianlan was half a step behind Li Huaqing and gave a faint Li Huaqing opposed such a meeting in the process. But since the result had been formed, the process was no longer important. This was an appointment passed by the Parliament of Zhongzhou State. Naturally, it was the will of the whole Zhongzhou State, including the will of Li Huaqing. Since this appointment appeared, then at least on the surface, whether it was against or in agreement, this appointment must be upheld, defended and supported by Qi Mulan. Politics was not about fighting. Upholding the decision of the organization was the most basic rule. No one could violate it and no one dared to violate it. This rule even exceeded the position. In this system, those who dared to trample on this rule never had a good end. Why not Wang Jingxin? Li Huaqing's brows furrowed as he suddenly asked. This is not my choice, Li Tianlan said calmly. In today's vote, Ning Qianqing had been excluded. So whether it was Wang Jingxin or Qi Mulan, it made no difference to him. Wang Jingxin's character is still very steady. The Prime Minister and I can reach a tacit understanding, but our thinking may not be the same. I do have the intention to use you to restrain the Wang family of Beihai. There is no need to deny this. Tianlan, in my heart, you are the future god of war of Zhongzhou State. It is your responsibility and obligation to share some of the pressure for Zhongzhou State. When Wang Jingxin goes to Tiannan, you don't have a conflict. But the Wang family of Beihai doesn't dare to be careless. If there is a conflict, I will naturally give you more support. After all, Wang Jingxin's position in Xianyuan City is just a game. There is a lot of room for advance and retreat. But Qi Mulan. Li Huaqing shook his head. You know very well what his past means. There was no doubt that the grievances between Li Tianlan and the Wang family of Beihai ran deep. But even if he swept the Wang family of Beihai and killed many people, for now, it was not impossible for Emperor Dong's palace to coexist with the Wang family of Beihai in the future. This was the room that Li Huaqing said. But Kunlun City was different. Kunlun City now occupied the position that belonged to the Li family. If the Li family wanted to rise, it had to trample on Kunlun City. There was no room for it. Therefore, Gu Xingyun tried his best to fight for the position of mayor of Xianyuan City. If Qi Mulan went to Tiannan, there would be no room between him and Emperor Dong's palace. It would only be a life-and-death battle. The most important thing was that such a life-and-death battle would not benefit Zhongzhou State at this stage. It would cause internal friction. No matter how calm Li Huaqing was, he was a little annoyed at this time. In fact, there is a better choice. Li Tianlan suddenly said, Why? Li Huaqing's movement paused for a moment. What? His voice was a little difficult. Why not Ning Qianqing? Li Tianlan asked casually. Li Huaqing did not speak. Sending Wang Jingxin was in the interest of Zhongzhou State, the academics, and the prince group. Sending Qi Mulan was not good for Zhongzhou State, but it was also harmless for the academics. But sending Ning Qianqing. This was not what Li Huaqing wanted to see. A new group that started to develop now and had a clear route would not be good for the academics in the long run. Li Tianlan seemed to really just ask casually. Li Huaqing did not answer, nor did he pester him. He just said calmly, sending Wang Jingxin, the Prime Minister means that the position left by Wang Jingxin should be given to Minister Dongqing to arrange. Yes. Li Huaqing responded casually, that's the explanation for you. Then there must be an explanation for sending Qi Mulan now. I'll take the position left by him. Li Tianlan said softly. Li Huaqing's eyes flickered and he asked, Who are you going to send? I'll have to wait and see. Li Tianlan shook his head. Now he can't wait to provoke you because he wants you to target him. He has just been appointed by Zhongzhou State, so Zhongzhou State must maintain his authority. The more you act, the better it will be for him. I suggest that you keep a low profile during this period. Even if you want to take action, don't do it in the open. At this time, those old people in the Li family can play a big role. There's no need to worry about Tiannan. Li Tianlan said quietly, I'm not interested in understanding Qi Mulan's means, just like I don't want to understand Wang Jingxin. Li Huaqing's movements suddenly stopped. He slowly turned around and looked at Li Tianlan. What do you mean? There's no room for negotiation, President. Li Tianlan said slowly, there's no room for Qi Mulan or Wang Jingxin in the position of Xianyuan City. If I'm not satisfied with them going to Tiannan, they can't go. He took a deep breath and continued, today's meeting is very lively, but this is not the result I want. The first mayor of Xianyuan City is Ning Qianqing, and it can only be Ning Qianqing. Li Huaqing's eyes suddenly became alert and dignified. Tianlan, what do you want to do? You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.